Good afternoon, and welcome everyone to the Appropriations Committee of the Maryland House of Delegates. I'm Delegate Maggie McIntosh, Chair of the committee, and today we have a number of bills that we'll be hearing, as a good number of bills that we'll be hearing. I will give you the order in which we're going to hear the bills so that you have some, hopefully semblance of time that you can appropriate for your bill. House Bill, we'll begin with House Bill 632, then move to House Bill 1086, House Bill 417, House Bill 740, House Bill 909, House Bill 734, House Bill 598, House Bill 580, House Bill 605, House Bill 567, House Bill 602, House Bill 579, House Bill 1037, House Bill 540, House Bill 899, House Bill 662, House Bill 1165. So that's going to be the order in which we're going to take bills today. We're going to begin with Delegate Rosenberg, who has two bills. Please begin with House Bill 632. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Appropriations Committee. This bill would enable us to pick up not just where we've left off with regard to the red line, but to build upon the action that our federal legislators took to begin the reconsideration of the red line. In preparing my testimony, I made the point that the red line goes from, as originally planned, the red line goes from the Hopkins Broadway complex in East Baltimore to the Social Security complex in Baltimore County. Those are two of the most significant employment sites in the Baltimore metropolitan area. And that is the purpose of the red line, or one of the purposes, and perhaps one of the major purposes of the red line, to help people get to work. And the benefits that that brings to the individual, but also the benefit of having a mass transit line that gets people to work instead of going in cars. I would assume, well, I shouldn't assume that people know the history of the red line, because it was on the verge of approval by the federal government, if not had approval from the federal government for funding. And that is, my best understanding is 90% of the funding. I should add that during my time on this committee on appropriations, I never had the privilege and honor of serving on the transportation subcommittee, in those days known as rails and jails, because it was law enforcement and transportation. So I don't have the kind of knowledge that I perhaps should have, but what I do know is that the funding, the Governor Hogan in his first year in office withdrew state funding for the red line, calling it a boondoggle. And it was the action of our two senators, Cardin and Van Hollen, and the three legislators from the Baltimore area, in Fume, Rupersberger, and Sarbanes, who got language into the bipartisan infrastructure bill to revive this project. Their language says that the Secretary of Transportation is to, quote, provide full and fair consideration to projects that seek an updated rating after a period of inactivity following an earlier rating and evaluation. Now that for sure includes the red line. It may also include other proposals, but for sure it includes the red line. So the purpose of the bill before you is to mandate that in the coming months, our Department of Transportation take the steps necessary so that we can fulfill this opportunity that's now in federal law in the infrastructure bill, and so that a new governor in next January is in a position to make the decision to move forward. I would also add that there is in the file, in the record, a letter signed by the 5 members of the state delegation, Team Maryland, if you will. And I know your chair is familiar with Team Maryland because she perhaps wrote some letters on the Team Maryland letterhead herself over the years. This is an important issue for the Baltimore metropolitan area. The purple line, of course, is going forward in the Washington metropolitan area. This is an essential need. I testified before the city and the county delegations separately this past Friday. The city delegation, I believe you have a letter of support from them, and I'm hopeful that we can get the same from the county delegation. So for all of those reasons, I request, let me make one last point. The very first meeting that I went to about the red line was at Edmondson High School. And the red line is not far from the highway to nowhere, which resulted in a significant amount of dislocation through eminent domain. And at that very first meeting, there was a citizen who spoke and said, I had my house condemned for the highway to nowhere, and I don't want it condemned a second time. And several months later, there was an MDOT flyer that said, no one's home will be taken to build the red line. And we were at a community meeting, and I turned to Delegate Nat Oakes, and I said, we're going to put that in the law, that there will be no condemnation to build the red line. We did, and this bill would do it again because that law is now sunsetted. But for all of those reasons, I urge a favorable report. Thank you. You're muted, Madam Chair.
I swear, today I'm having mute problems, but Delegate Metzger has a question of the sponsor.
Yeah, thank you, Delegate Rosenberg. The question I have goes back in my mind years ago. Is this the one that goes up through O'Donnell Street, or has that been revamped? Right in front of the waterfront?
Well, if I could, I know all the rail lines being local, I can tell you where it goes in West Baltimore, in my district.
Okay.
And I don't know if I can defer to Delegate Learman, who might know better what was proposed for the red line
Right.
in East Baltimore. I know there were some issues there.
Right.
But I would also say that I've been to Boston, and I've gone from to Fenway Park via
Right.
the Green Line. That's no surprise. And the Green Line is right in the middle of Commonwealth Ave, a big thoroughfare. And Com Ave, as they say in Boston, is thriving. The Green Line there hasn't been a detriment to that area.
Okay. I know that I think if I recall, that was kind of a bad spot, or they shared that. So just thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes. Delegate Amprey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just thank you, Delegate Rosenberg, for bringing this bill forward. And as your West Baltimore partner, the red line is meaningful to me. But I was hoping you could speak to just the I think people forget sometimes that in Baltimore, our students don't have a normal bus system. And if you maybe could speak to just what this could possibly do for our kids being able to get to and from school easier and so forth. And if you have any insight on what the red line would mean for our students in Baltimore, and how important it would be.
Well, it would be as essential and beneficial for them going to school as it is for people to go to work anywhere on the line, from Social Security on the west to Hopkins on the east. And as an example of the existing rail line for Baltimore City, the Baltimore metropolitan area, one of the stops is at Cold Spring Lane, which is a block away from the Poly Western complex, two of our top high schools, not the best high school, of course, but two of the top high schools in Baltimore. And so this will enable more students to take light rail to get to school.
Very good.
Best high school in Baltimore is in Delegate McIntosh's district.
Yeah, that's correct. City. Okay, thank you very much. We have testimony from Elizabeth Haffrey from Johns Hopkins University in Medicine. Hello, Elizabeth. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chairs, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Elizabeth Haffrey on behalf of Johns Hopkins University in Medicine. I'm happy to testify in support of House Bill 632. As the delegate noted, that this will be an expansion of the Red Line and also adding a MARC stop to the Bayview Campus Medical Center. As the largest private employer for the state of Maryland, with more than 5,300 Marylanders in our employ, Johns Hopkins understands the value and investments that can be made to the Maryland transportation system. We understand that those are critical for our employees, students, patients, and visitors. They rely on this transportation system to get to work or to school, to access healthcare, and to meet their needs. Johns Hopkins Health System, among other elements, includes Johns Hopkins Hospital in East Baltimore and also Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center in Southeast Baltimore. We are one of the largest healthcare delivery systems serving the city. In particular, the Johns Hopkins Bayview Medical Center campus sits over 130 acres and consistently consists of 2.8 million square feet of research, patient care, and support facilities, which employs about 5,500 people and receives approximately 400 patients every year. Expanding access to this medical center would be invaluable as a business development on the Eastern Avenue corridor is advancing rapidly, especially with the Yard 56 expansion and the continued elevation of Highlandtown Business District. Yard 56 is well positioned to offer an array of amenities for hospital guests, staff, and residents of East Baltimore. Phase 2 of Yard 56 is currently underway, and a MARC stop would offer the convenience and access the community needs. In addition, as Delegate Ampry noted, there are new school developments and other residential developments in that area as well, near the Bayview campus. And so for these reasons, we believe that expanding transportation access, adding a MARC rail stop would be an invaluable benefit to our staff, employees, and patients. And for these reasons, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 632.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any further questions? I should, by the way, before we conclude this bill hearing, say that we had Delegate Learman here, Delegate Clark, and Delegate Ampry, who are visiting us from Environment and Transportation on this bill. So thank you for coming. And Delegate Ampry, thank you for your question. It's good. All right, that concludes the bill hearing. Thank you very much. Delegate Rosenberg, we will move to 1086.
Is my fellow witness, the Attorney General of the state of Maryland, available?
He's important.
He has not entered the waiting room.
You want to go ahead, or what do you want to do? Or you want me to put another bill in front of you?
Yeah, he knows the bill. He knows the settlement aspect. I know the restitution fund. He knows the settlement.
So why don't we do this? I'll move to House Bill 417.
Do the first part.
If you want me to, and then we'll come back to your bill. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay. All right. We are now going to move to House Bill 417. Employees' Retirement and Pension Systems, Reemployment Earnings Limitation. And I believe we should have here Andrew Casserly to present the bill. Is Andrew here?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, and this is a short and sweet bill, so it should fit in the order quite nicely. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to you and your esteemed committee members. For the record, my name is Andrew Castley, Senior Advisor for Governor Hogan's Legislative Office. I'm coming before you today to humbly present House Bill 417, the Employees' Retirement and Pension Systems Reemployment Earnings Limitation for COVID-19 exemption. As the global pandemic ravaged across our state, it had a major impact on our ability to provide services to our citizens. With many of our frontline workers impacted by COVID-19, the governor's executive order called for assistance from our retired citizens to help fill those gaps. House Bill 417 allows those retired individuals who stepped out of retirement to provide critical services to avoid any negative impacts to their current retirement plans. So, Madam Chair, this bill, I believe, impacts approximately like 8 people who were coming from the Department of Health. What I'd like to do, with your permission, if I could turn it over to Ms. Heather Scheck from the Department of Health to give some details on the legislation. Thank you.
That would be fine. Heather?
I have not seen Heather Scheck enter the waiting room.
Uh-oh.
Madam Chair, she may have, I know she had other hearings as well today. I'd be happy to attempt to answer any questions that the committee may have in regards to this legislation.
Okay. Any questions? Are there any questions? Yes, Delegate Beitzel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Andrew, you mentioned that this impacts 8 people. And basically, as I understand it, this would really mean that they came to work because of COVID and the pandemic, and what they earn might be impacted by a loss of some of their retirement benefits, and this would stop that from happening. Is that correct?
That's exactly correct. These were retirees from the healthcare system and the labor system due to the overwhelming. We had people that were out. We had an increased volume of needs, so these individuals came back. And to your point, exactly what this goal seeks to do is to shield them from any penalties for those additional earnings.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. And there is no opposition to this bill, correct?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Any other questions? Very good. You did a great job, Andrew.
Thank you very much. You all have an awesome day.
I think you had some experience in this.
Just a little, madam.
Thank you. Have a great day. Is the Attorney General with us now?
No, ma'am, not as of yet.
Okay. I'm going to move to Delegate Learman, who is with us, I believe. Delegate Learman here. Boy.
This is Danny, her staff. She just stepped out for 2 seconds. She'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. I'm going to move to, she has, I believe, 3 bills.
Correct.
And the minute the Attorney General walks in, we will move to, Delegate Rosenberg's bill, but I want to give Delegate Lehrman a chance to do her bills. Wait a second or 2 while you run out and grab her. And Cherie, would you keep an eye out for the Attorney General?
Will do.
We're about ready to skip over Delegate Lehrman too.
Chair McIntosh.
Yes.
Delegate Learman said she'll be right back.
Okay, well, I'm going to move. Delegate Solomon, are you ready?
Yeah, I think we may have a couple of folks who are going to join us, but I think they would be fine. They'd be fine if we moved ahead to
Good.
keep things going.
Thank you. All right, go ahead, Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this will be a quick one. So this HB 598, first of all, for the record, Delegate Jared Solomon, glad to be able to present this bill. So HB 598 is the Transfer with Success Act 2.0. It's 2.0 because this committee in its infinite wisdom chose to pass the first Transfer with Success Act last year, and that is in the process of being implemented, and the regs are in the process of going through MHAC. What this bill does is sort of continues the collaborative work that that our committee, the folks over in the Senate, and the folks at USM, the community colleges, and MICUA have done around improving the transfer process. And so USM is about to unveil a new updated platform called ArtSys that some of us have gotten a preview of and discussed in subcommittee. And that is essentially a platform available not only on the back end to the universities, but also to students on the front end to make that process to go from school to school and from community college to four-year really as smoothly as possible. And so what this bill would do is mandate some funding to make sure that that our community colleges can adequately use the system, and would make sure that information that gets up there, that gets uploaded in there is 100% honored and used as part of the transfer process. So we've been having some really great conversations with all the parties. We have a couple of tweaks that we're going to make based on those conversations, but this is, again, fundamentally just to continue to improve the transfer process. As you may remember from last year, DLS has shared some really compelling numbers with us. On average, potentially 40% of transfer students lose credits in between going from a community college to a four-year. And that's money that we wind up paying in multiple ways. Students, get set back in their education. We obviously provide support to both community and four-year schools, so we wind up paying double for it. And we know the smoother the transfer process, the quicker students actually graduate and finish their degree. So with that, I would ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. We have a question from Delegate Valentino Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate Solomon. I know we have a busy day, but I just want to clarify then. So the fact that I have an intern from Anne Arundel Community College doing the same internship program here, and last year I had an intern, or the year before when we did have interns, from College Park. The College Park was getting credit, and my Anne Arundel Community College student can't get the internship credit transferred, and she's working 4 jobs to stay in school and has to now take extra credits to get transferred over. So the exact same program, not transferring from community college to College Park, your bill would assist that student. Is that correct?
It would, absolutely. And that sounds like something that the community colleges should address even without our bill. So would be happy to work with you offline to make sure that we facilitate that conversation, because that's exactly what we're trying not to have happen.
Thank you. If anyone else is having problems with interns doing the program here and it not transferring, let me know. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we have people here to testify. I will call you and we'll get through. Remember, you have 2 minutes. First person is Brad Phillips.
Oh, well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I will be brief and quick. My name is Brad Phillips. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, and I too would like to thank Delegate Solomon for introducing this legislation, the Transfer with Success Act 2.0, which obviously, as the name implies, is continuing to build on the great work that's been done over the past few years. So seamless transfer has been a strategic initiative for Maryland's community colleges since I can remember, and all 16 community colleges strongly support this legislation. We just heard from Delegate Valentino Smith about her experience. I'm sure many of you have had an experience either at a community college or have someone in your family or a constituent that's reached out to you regarding transfer. For too long, students have been frustrated with transfer, and this bill has the potential to streamline one of the most stressful aspects of students seeking to attend a four-year institution. As they transfer, students need to have the assurances that the courses they take at a community college will indeed transfer. When it doesn't occur, students really, what we experience is an equity issue as they have to retake the courses like Delegate Solomon has said, which adds additional cost both to the state as well as the student and extends the student's time to degree. But this legislation for this first time can really fix and acknowledge and fund a truly statewide transfer platform that we think has the potential to be a game changer for students. We ask that you support this legislation with the amendments that Delegate Solomon has mentioned, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we're going to go now to Brianna January, Maryland Association of Counties.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair. Good to see you again, and committee members. For the record, Brianna January, representing the Maryland Association of Counties, also known as MACO, in strong support of HB 598. As always, you have my written testimony, so I'll be brief today. Counties applaud the innovation and state commitment to community colleges as offered by this bill, and we thank the bill sponsor for it. As you've heard, and I won't repeat, there remains to be many problems with transferring credits between our 2 and our 4-year institutions. And these bottlenecks, to be frank, are a waste of time and money for both the locals and the state as we both support community colleges. HB 598 does seek to address this. And so for those reasons, MACO urges a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. We have Antoinette Coleman from University System of Maryland.
Thank you, Chairman and Madam Chairman and Delegate Solomon for this bill. We so appreciate this. ARTSIS has been around for many years and has supported many students. And we all know that transfer is huge to our state and enrollment. The ARTSIS, the new platform that this bill will support, will bring together a lot of the gaps that have occurred in transfer. It will look deep into issues that Delegate Valentino Smith is addressing. It will reduce the number of credits lost by students. It will also give students the ability to navigate their pathways from a community college to a 4-year institution in the state, or for students who are interested in transferring between community colleges because they move, and for students for reasons that transfer to other 4-year institutions. We are working very closely with the ARTSIS platform to address Transfer with Success, the 2013 Act, and we will have the opportunity in ARTSIS to look at all of those denial of credits and ensure that those students get the credits that they need to move forward. I thank the delegate for putting forth this bill. I thank you, Madam Chairman, for the opportunity. And USM is pleased to be the administrator of this as we work collaboratively with the other segments in the state. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we'll have Mary Bolt with Cecil College.
Thank you. Mary Bolt, president of Cecil College, located in Northeast Maryland. 70% of our students are first-generation students. It's challenging enough for our students to navigate entering into college. They shouldn't have to continue the challenge when they transfer. We know that if we support a seamless transfer system between community colleges, 4 years, community colleges, 4-year to 4-year, community college, we are really helping the Maryland economy. Our students can get out and get their certifications, their degrees, enter the workforce, and contribute to their local economies. Because we also know that most of our community college students reside in the area of their community college. So I urge the favorable report. Thank you for your time and attention to this really very, very important matter. It'll save time and money and state resources. And I think it is something that will support all students in Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President Bolt. Next, we have Charlene Dukes with Montgomery College.
Thank you, and Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. My name is Charlene Dukes. I'm the interim president at Montgomery College and the former president of Prince George's Community College here in Maryland. So this has been an issue that has been near and dear to me for a long time, more than 25 years, and that we are asking your favorable report on HB 598 because our students need it and they deserve it. They are the ones who will fill the workforce shortages that we see today. And the one thing that we do know here in Montgomery County, 3 out of 4 employment opportunities require a bachelor's degree. And we want to make sure that our students can get there, can transfer, and do it seamlessly. So I certainly won't repeat what my colleagues have said. What we do is we urge your favorable support. Why? Because the students of Maryland's community colleges deserve it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dukes. And also we have listed from Montgomery College, Louise Snowy.
Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Louise Ndovi. I'm a Rockville resident and a student at Montgomery College. I am here to ask you all to support HB 598, Transfer with Success Act 2.0. I'm studying social sciences and health at MC because of the high quality faculty, the great programs, and because the total cost of my college education is so much more affordable. I know I'll be well prepared for the next step as I hope to transfer to the University of Maryland, UMD, to earn a degree in psychology so I can become a clinical psychologist and work in Montgomery County. As I complete my courses this semester, I'm in the middle of taking steps to transfer, which can be an overwhelming process since the current system is hard to use and I'm uncertain whether the information is up to date. This makes me worry about whether UMD will accept my credits while having to worry about my college applications as well. Students need certainty that when we attend a community college, we can easily get to that next degree. And that means we need a seamless transfer process. I cannot afford to waste money and retake a course that I've already taken at Montgomery College that would be even more expensive at UMD. Seamless transfer would save me time to earn a bachelor's degree. Being forced to retake courses at a transfer institution is a huge barrier that students like me cannot afford, as we try to get through college as quickly as we can so we can work, help our families, and get started in our careers. Seamless transfer will help keep students motivated to complete their associate's degree and keep on the path to earn a bachelor's degree. It's discouraging that four-year institutions do not value the time and effort spent into some courses at a two-year college. When a student loses hard-earned credits during transfer, they might feel like a bachelor's degree is just not attainable, and they leave school altogether. Please support HB 598 to help make it easier to transfer so students like me can earn an AA degree from MC and go on to earn a bachelor's degree without extra expense or time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Navovi, for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee for the witnesses? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 598. We'll move back now to Delegate Learman, House Bill 740, Retirement and Pension Systems Investment Climate Risk Fiduciary Duties. Delegate Learman, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Hello, appropriations colleagues. I'm here on behalf of the Joint Committee on Pensions to present a bill that was approved by the Joint Committee on Pensions with a bipartisan vote. And I learned that just 4 years ago today, Delegate Corman had his hearing on a bill that resulted in really the first important efforts to monitor and add transparency to the climate risk that our portfolio, our pension portfolio sees. So where are we today, 4 years later? Well, that bill has been enormously helpful in pushing the conversation of safeguarding our pension forward. This past fall, the Joint Committee on Pensions held a series of briefings as usual, but for the first time, we devoted one of those meetings to better understanding the extreme risk that climate change poses to the portfolio. We learned what other states are doing, where other pension funds are investing, what fiduciary duties mandate, including under federal law, and we reviewed more about what private asset managers and investors like BlackRock and others are doing. Well, with 3,100 miles of shoreline, Maryland is the fourth most vulnerable state to sea level rise associated with climate change. And the effects from climate change pose not only a threat to our livelihood and well-being, but also pose a huge financial risk as economies move away from fossil fuels and towards sustainable renewable energy technologies. In light of this, major institutional investors around the country are recognizing that climate-related risk is investment risk. Reports have shown that investors are increasingly considering sustainability and environmental risk in their investment decisions, and investment management companies have published action plans and guidance for a transition to a net zero economy. Now, I know that the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System has provided you with some information on what is currently being done. This bill will help push us even further along and provide more support to do this work. This bill, which again was approved with bipartisan support by the Joint Committee on Pensions, requires the fiduciaries of the State Retirement and Pension Fund to consider the impact of climate change on investment risk and to monitor net zero aligned investments in climate solutions to ensure the long-term sustainability of the investment portfolio. It will, over time, encourage Maryland state pension investment funds to move away from dirty fuel, dirty gas, and dirty fuels and toward green and renewable energy as well. In order to support this transition, the bill requires fiduciaries to conduct a climate risk assessment. And the bill further requires fiduciaries to identify investment opportunities that support a low carbon economy, develop transition assessments for investors in high impact sectors, and evaluate whether internal and external investment managers are taking steps towards a low carbon economy. The bill will codify the understanding that major institutional investors around the world, as well as some of our brother and sister pension funds, have already found that climate risk is indeed investment risk. State, national, and global transitions to increased use of renewable technology present a significant opportunity that can be harnessed to support the retirement security of the over 400,000 participants in our system. This legislation, if passed, will assure our retirees that we are taking proactive measures to keep their pension dollars safe and protect the financial future of Marylanders. I urge you to vote favorably on HB 740.
Thank you very much, Delegate Lear, for presenting the bill and also for your leadership on the commission during the interim. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? This afternoon, we have two witnesses who are joining us. First is Jeffrey Weisner with 350 MoCo. If you could limit your testimony to 2 minutes, appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity to testify on this bill. My name is Haley Krim, and I'm a climate researcher. I'm testifying on behalf of 350 MoCo, a Montgomery County-based grassroots organization working for climate justice in our communities. Jeffrey Weisner was originally going to testify, but had a conflict, so he asked me to present this testimony on behalf of our organization. So first, we would like to thank Delegate Learman and Senator Elfreth for their hard work on this legislation and for introducing this issue into the discussion. Focusing the pension on climate risk is an important first step for both protecting our retirees' financial future and making sure our state investments are helping protect all of our futures from the existential risk of climate change. This bill is overdue, and the SRPS needs to use the tools that this bill gives them to move rapidly on decarbonizing our pension assets. I'm able to offer you an important comparison from Montgomery County, which began reducing fossil fuel holdings in 2017. A recent report shows that while the state pension fund holds 162 of the 200 largest carbon emitting companies in the world, Montgomery County's Employee Retirement System pension fund holds only 25 of those same companies in its public equities portfolio. Even more importantly, the portfolio's overall holdings by weight, that is the value of these companies that these companies hold in the portfolio, is less than a third of the SRPS's holdings. It's clear that the SRPS has a long way to go before it catches up to Montgomery County or to other pension systems like those of Baltimore, Washington, D.C., New York City, New York State, and the state of Maine, which have divested. And for example, 2 years ago, New York State announced divestment from 27 thermal coal companies because they couldn't show how they could manage climate risk. And last year, they divested from 7 tar sands companies for the same reason. It is past time for us to align our pension system with a safe and livable future and shed these money-losing investments. Passing this legislation is a start on making sure we protect our pension investments for climate risk. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Alan Miller.
I have not seen Alan Miller enter the waiting room.
Thank you very much.
I'm here.
Alan Miller.
I'm here.
Okay, if you could please proceed, 2 minutes.
Yes, sorry for the delay. Several years ago, I had the opportunity to work with Delegate Corman on what became the first state law that mandated consideration of climate risk. This was shortly after I had retired from the World Bank, where I had worked on these issues for more than a decade. It's been an extraordinary period since then in the last few years, with climate risk now being incorporated in several federal agencies, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Commodities Future Trading Commission, and at the international level by the Bank of England and many other leading financial institutions. The state of Maryland was, as I noted, the first state that had adopted a mandate for consideration of risk. As the previous witness has just said, I think it's now time for the state of Maryland to take the further actions that Delegate Learman has outlined that would be incorporated in HB 740, and to join what already are a number of other states, including Pennsylvania, Minnesota, and California, who have mandated in different ways consideration of climate risk for their state budgets and their state portfolios. Finally, just to note the timeliness of this legislation, which follows a recent announcement of much more clear findings of sea level rise, which have now shown that we can expect that Annapolis and your state capital will be subject to steadily increasing flooding between now and 2050. And there's very little that can be done to prevent that. Finally, just to note one of the important words used in Delegate Learman's comments, which is there is not only risk, there is opportunity here. So in order to assure adequate compensation to state employees, I strongly support the adoption of House Bill 740. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller, for being here. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor or the witnesses? Delegate Grice.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Is the ultimate goal of this to reduce the supply of anything that's derived from fossil fuel?
The ultimate goal of this is to make sure that we are getting the best return for our dollars. We have an obligation, or I should say the Board of Trustees has an obligation as fiduciaries to ensure that they are safeguarding the pension fund and that they are maximizing their ability to earn dollars on our investments. That is the goal of this legislation. We have seen, as some of those people testified, we have seen that climate risk is being taken into account by multiple other pension systems around the country. And it's time for Maryland to step up and ensure that climate risk is being taken seriously by the fiduciaries of the Maryland State Retirement and Pension System as well.
Okay, so we want to do our small part. Obviously, the state of Maryland is very small compared to our output of carbon globally. So we want to do our small part. Now, I guess my question is, if everyone in the world were to do this, we were to divest in anything fossil fuel, are we at all concerned about? Because right now we're looking at $3.50 gallon for gas. We're looking at, our electricity bills are going through the roof, and a lot of that has to do with public policies. And is there any concern at all that this might have a negative impact on families who are struggling right now to pay their bills?
No, I do not think that that is a concern or will be in any way a result of this legislation. I mean, I'm not going to get into the larger question of whether those happenings are a result of public policy or not. I think that's a debatable statement. But the Board of Trustees of the State Retirement and Pension System have fiduciary obligations to the pensioners, right? To our retirees. They need to make sure, those fiduciaries need to ensure that they are earning the most secure and that they are doing the best that they can to earn dollars for our pension system, right? We're very close to 80%. Making sure that climate risk is being taken into account will help ensure that we are doing that and that we are earning what we're supposed to be earning for our retirees.
That's correct.
That is what fiduciaries can take into account.
We want to make sure we're getting a return on our investment.
Right.
As the energy sector in the past, they've been pretty profitable in the past. To say they're not, I don't know if that's not true or if that's true.
Well, there was a huge report that I haven't had the opportunity to dissect all of, but there was a big report that just came out at the end of last week demonstrating that making the case that if the pension system would have had fewer investments in certain fossil fuel companies over the last couple decades, we would have earned a greater return on investment. So I think there is a very solid case to be made that now, for the past few years and going forward, we need to be taking this into account. And I don't think this is not out of line with what the system is currently interested in doing. If you read the system's letter of information, you will see that this is also of concern to them. They want to ensure this as well.
Are we looking at sectors that maybe have a smaller return than the energy than fossil fuel sector? Are we going to go after those industries as well,
No.
as far as performance?
Oh, certainly as a fiduciary, we have to make sure that, that's sort of yes, as fiduciaries, Andy Palmer is here, our chief investment officer. It is incumbent upon the system and the fiduciaries to the system to make sure that they are maximizing, right, their returns. And so if there's some other system out there that has nothing to do with climate, and for some reason that, that company or investment isn't doing well, then yeah, we need to get out of that. That's not addressed in this bill because this bill is specifically about climate risk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Delegate Mangione.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't want to be repetitive. I think Delegate Lehrman touched on a lot of that, what I was going to ask, and Delegate Grice, but I guess I'll ask Mr. Palmer, since he's here, if I guess with his expertise, if he foresees this new direction. Some could argue, I would argue political, but we don't have to have that discussion, going into what makes the decision for how we invest going forward. Do you foresee, as Delegate Grice was mentioned, do you think this is going to lead to higher returns, one? And two, do you think there will be more issues like this going forward that may result in how we decide what we invest the pension fund?
So just make sure everybody can hear me. This is Andrew Palmer, Chief Investment Officer for the pension system. I'm joined by Martin Logan, the Executive Director. To your question, we are trying to understand the impacts of climate change on the potential outcome for the system. We've incorporated it into our asset allocation. We basically understand that over the next 25 years, we're going to change the way and how much carbon is used on the global economy. But over that period of time, there are going to be policy changes and a lot of flux. And so we have to make sure that we have the flexibility to adjust our policy and our investment program for changes in the path that we are taking on this transition. And so this bill allows us to do that, which I think is an appropriate piece of legislation to address this issue at this time.
Thank you. So then, I guess that answers most of it. Thanks for that.
Delegate McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for Mr. Palmer as well. Without this legislation, are we preventing you from not giving recommendations of not investing in fossil fuel? Are we already preventing you from doing that? And if so, are there other things that were preventing you to give good sound in advice of what we should be investing or not investing in our pensions? I'm just trying to find out what the reason behind this bill is, that, or are we not giving you the skill sets, or do we not have the skill sets on the board?
Before Andy Palmer answers, would you mind if I just said one thing, Delegate McKay, to answer you?
Sure.
So it seems like people are, this bill does not tell the pension fund what they can or cannot invest in. That is not what this bill does. This bill simply says, codifies that climate risk must be taken into account as part of a fiduciary duty. So I just want to be clear. This is not telling the investment system or our fiduciaries, you have to invest in X or you can't invest in Y, right? This is a really important measure, and it provides flexibility to the Board of Trustees going forward, but it also ensures that they are taking climate risk into account. And as a General Assembly, right, we have many constituents who are retirees and who are very concerned that their retirement investments are invested wisely. And based on the practices that we're seeing around the country, the Joint Committee on Pensions decided that this was an important step to make.
Okay, but with all due respect, that just sounds like mumbo jumbo. And it just seems that we don't have the people to make those good decisions. I hear what you're saying, but it just doesn't make any sense. I don't understand the purpose of this bill, and I just think I'm just concerned that it's putting more pressure into those representing making those decisions when it just sounds like word salad. So I
Well, I would
apologize for not
encourage you to,
understanding.
I would encourage you to watch all of the hearings that the Joint Committee on Pensions held over the fall if you want to have a better understanding of how the pension system, how our pension system works and the work that we do on the Joint Committee.
So my issue isn't how they work. My issue is I tend to believe that they already have the ability to make these decisions. And so I don't understand the purpose of this bill if it's ensuring that this is a risk, and I'm not here to debate that it is or it's not a risk. I just don't understand why it is necessary.
The bill sponsor, if I may.
Sure.
Delegate McKay, this bill is going to go before the pension subcommittee. We can work out those issues and you can meet with the bill sponsor and have additional questions at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate McKay. Next question, last question for this bill is Delegate Corman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I just want to shout out Alan Miller, my constituent. I randomly knocked on his door 7 years ago and learned a lot about this issue. And I'm really happy that Delegate Lehrman has taken the baton. My question is actually for Andy Palmer, because I want to make sure I understood what you were saying correctly. You view this as a flexible piece of legislation, not one that dictates a particular outcome?
Definitely. To the point of the previous question, this firmly makes climate change a responsibility, a fiduciary responsibility of the board. And why that's important is that we are, while not governed by federal law, we tend to follow federal law on matters of fiduciary responsibility, and particularly in the case of what they would call economically targeted investments or sort of double bottom line investments. And so, and there has been changing policy coming out of the federal level about how much fiduciary responsibility a board can take with addressing these types of issues. So it's making it clearly a fiduciary responsibility kind of frees us to really focus as much attention on as we think is appropriate, and is actually enabling us to tackle it in an appropriate way where we might have felt a little bit more constrained by the federal law. So this is actually helpful for us in terms of giving us clear guidance that we are able to move forward and address it.
Thank you. May I ask a follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Or Madam Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm not sure who's in charge. Thank you, Andy. I appreciate that. You know, obviously for 5 years, you've been doing risk assessments, and despite what we heard 5 years ago or 4 years ago, it hasn't hurt the returns at all. I'm curious if there's data from other systems that have either done this type of risk analysis or put this flexibility in place, or have gone even further, because many jurisdictions have gone much further than this bill does, about what the effect has been on the returns during that time.
I'm not aware of any studies on those topics. It's been a relatively short period of time to have any conclusive studies. So I don't have any knowledge of any studies like that.
Yeah, but no horror stories yet coming out of some of these jurisdictions?
No.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Delegate Corman. To all the members, if you have additional questions, we refer them to the pension subcommittee. We have the Attorney General of the state of Maryland, Brian Frost, who has now joined us. So now we'll go back to HB 1086, Delegate Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to my former colleague and still legal colleague, the Attorney General of Maryland, Brian Frost. We're here today because 3 years ago, I introduced legislation creating an opioid restitution fund, which would be the repository for money we receive as a state from any settlement with those found responsible either through settlement, or you may not be found legally responsible, but those involved in the opioid industry, any funds that we receive, so that it would go to uses that would address the problems caused by opioids, prevent further use, as opposed to going into the general fund. This committee well understands that distinction. You've sent the bill to the floor and to the governor's desk in 2019. We now have money to put into that fund, specifically $492 million. And Maryland's share of that settlement is greater than it would be based solely on our population, because the problem is greater in Maryland than it is in other states. So therefore, we have more money, and this bill is needed so that we can receive the money and spend it appropriately. I would now, so the Attorney General knows the details far better than I do, so I would just conclude by urging a favorable report and ask you to listen to the wise counsel of Attorney General Brian Frosh. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, wise counsel. Welcome to the Appropriations Committee, and it's great to see you.
It's great to see you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members. It's a pleasure to be with you. I wish it were in person, but this is pretty good. I want to thank Delegate Rosenberg. First of all, he was farsighted in 2019 in anticipating today's good news. That is to say, in setting up an opioid abatement fund statewide, and you all were prescient in enacting that. The question that this bill poses to you is, how would you like $400 to $500 million for opioid abatement for the state of Maryland and its subdivisions? The need for this bill arose out of negotiations that our office has been conducting, along with many other attorneys general across the country, with the three largest distributors of opioids and with Johnson & Johnson, or Janssen, one of its subsidiaries, a manufacturer of opioids. The ultimate result of those negotiations is $26 billion nationally that they will pay to states and subdivisions across the country for opioid abatement. The terms of the settlement required the state to negotiate with the counties and the municipalities, the municipalities that were larger in size than 10,000, and the municipalities that were litigating in all of the counties, and to achieve their buy-in in order to get the maximum amount that Maryland is entitled to. And as Delegate Rosenberg said, the maximum amount is about $492 million. We were able, with really excellent work with the Maryland Municipal League and the Maryland Association of Counties, to bring into our agreement 58 of the 60 subdivisions who were covered by the settlement agreement that the distributors of Johnson & Johnson wanted us, insisted that we bring in. There are very sharp penalties if we fail to bring in counties and cities. We got everybody but Baltimore City and the Baltimore City school system, and I'm just saying that for identification purposes. They're the only two subdivisions or subdivision in the school system that that are not participating in the settlement. As a result, Maryland will receive about $100 million less than we would otherwise. We'll be at about $393 million, we believe. The truth is that it's a net loss to the state of $30 to $40 million, and the city of Baltimore and the Baltimore City school systems can maintain their actions against these would-be defendants. We think this is an excellent deal. It will be the largest recovery we receive for the opioid plague that we've experienced over the past couple of decades in our state and around the country. Some of the more egregious participants, some of the folks who did the worst, like I would argue that Purdue was perhaps the worst actor in this situation. They don't have enough money to get us anywhere near $26 billion. We're in negotiations with them. Purdue went into bankruptcy. The Sacklers, their owners, offered to put in $4 billion in order to get bankruptcy protection themselves. We were one of 9 states that objected to that. We're still in litigation with them. We're negotiating with them to try to get them to increase the amount of money that they will contribute to the pot, but I can assure you that this is the largest amount of money that Maryland will receive to heal our opioid problems. And it's a good deal. Almost every state has joined this settlement, and we're very fortunate, I think, to have almost all of our subdivisions joining as well. I think that covers it. It's a very complex subject, and I can get into the details of the settlement, get into the details of the way we arrived here, but that's pretty much it. It's $400 million. We need this bill in order to enshrine the deal that we've made with the counties and cities into law, because the payments will take place over 18 years. And we don't want a future governor to say, you know what, I just decided I'm not going to honor that deal. It needs to be in law. The counties and cities need it to be in law, and the state does as well. So I hope you will give this bill a favorable recommendation, and I'd be delighted to answer questions if there are any.
Okay, any questions? No questions? You did a great job.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Stumbling in the right direction for once.
Oh, no. See, I shouldn't have done that. Here we have Delegate Grice has a question.
No, actually, it shouldn't be a tough question. Actually, it's what happens if we don't pass this law?
Well, it'll be a mess, frankly. You know, we made a deal with the counties and cities that was premised on our being able to deliver the terms and conditions of the memorandum of understanding that we reached with them. So if we don't pass this law, the county, Washington County or Anne Arundel County or any city or county that's expecting payments will have to cross its fingers each year and hope that the money is in the budget. And what this bill does is it says the money must be in the budget and it must go to the cities and counties according to the formula that has been reached in this memorandum of understanding. And this is one of the details I was talking about. The formula by which the money is distributed is based partly on population and primarily on opioid intensity. That is, how much did each jurisdiction suffer as a result of the opioid crisis? How many opioid medicines were prescribed? How many opioid deaths were there? How many opioid use disorder cases were there? So it's, we think we got the right formula. We think we got the right distribution. The counties and cities agree with us. We just don't want there to be a bump in the road 5 years from now or 12 years from now. And this bill will ensure that there is not.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, pleasure to have you. We now have Brianna January, Maryland Association of Counties.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, esteemed committee members. Brianna January back again, Associate Policy Director with the Maryland Association of Counties, this time in strong support of HB 1086. Counties were very pleased to work very hard with the Attorney General, municipal governments, and other stakeholders during the interim on this historic settlement. As you heard, the bill is the product of many hours of negotiations, and it really represents what counties see as the most equitable division of funds from the state's recent opioid-related settlements. Committee, it truly should not be lost on you how notable it is that all 23 of our county governments, with the exception of Baltimore City, which Mr. Attorney General has already explained, agreed to these terms as outlined in the bill, all 23. And they did so on terms of dropping their own independent lawsuits. Codifying this language would solidify those terms that all 23 counties have agreed to. And to be frank, not doing so would be akin to pulling the rug from out under us, as Mr. Attorney General expressed. Counties see this agreement as a fair and equitable path forward as we continue to grapple with the opioid epidemic in Maryland. And we strongly urge the committee to move this bill as favorable. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Very good. We have also Megan Lynch from the County Executive Ball and Howard County Government. You hear Megan?
Chair McIntosh, I think that's me.
No.
I think she registered me.
Okay, well, very good. She showed up in the name column. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. I understand. Good afternoon, everybody. Chair McIntosh, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. My name is Gary Cook, KUC for the record. I'm the County Solicitor for Howard County and have been since 2015. I am here to testify on behalf of the county in strong support of HB 1086. After the global settlements were reached last July with the major defendants, I give my hat off to Attorney General Frosch. He convened basically everybody into the room. And then from that first meeting, we condensed down to a small work group of some county attorneys, municipal lawyers, MACO, MML, and the Attorney General himself and his senior staff. And we conducted a number of meetings over the course of 6 months, at least a dozen, lots of drafts of the sharing agreement. And what the bill concerns is the implementation of the state subdivision sharing agreement. And it's essential that we have that blessing on the deal. It improves the allocation of settlement funds over what would be the default mechanism under the global settlements that were reached at the national level. And again, I give credit to AG Frosch for really recognizing where the impact has really been most strongly felt. And so the money is coming to the locals, the cities and the counties to implement and spend to abate what's been going on for too long. So with that, I ask please that you would issue a favorable report on this bill. And thank you everybody who's on this hearing that was in those meetings over the last 6 months for your support.
Thank you. We now have Bill George from the Maryland Municipal League. Is Bill here?
Yes. Good afternoon to the chair, members of the committee. Bill George with the Maryland Municipal League here today in support of House Bill 1086. Much has been said about this process and agreement, so I won't do my best to not repeat anything. But first of all, thank you to the Attorney General and his staff for working so hard with us and all the stakeholders on this and helping us reach a very, very equitable and righteous agreement that will allow for opioid remediation throughout the state. I just want to talk briefly about the municipal perspective. So of the 60 subdivisions that were identified by the National Settlement Agreement, 35 were municipalities. They all signed on to the agreement. So for those of you who know that there are 157 municipalities throughout the state, the other 122 are not left out in the cold thanks to this agreement. There will be a grant fund, competitive grant fund set up by the Maryland Department of Health, to which the 122 smaller municipalities will be able to apply to should they have a worthwhile project or service that they think will lead towards remediation within their jurisdiction. And this couldn't have been done without the work of everyone that has been mentioned so far. So a big thanks to everyone. And from the municipal perspective, we wholeheartedly ask for a favorable report on this bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That concludes the bill hearing. Thank you, Delegate Rosenberg, for your patience. Well, we found our Attorney General, you know.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, committee, we're now going to return to Delegate Learman, who has 2 more bills to present, House Bill 909.
All right, guys. Hello, everybody again. Brooke Learman offering testimony in support of HB 909. This is really a technical fix to our state personnel and pensions bill. It basically replaces the current reporting requirement that exists surrounding the requirement to investigate and use minority business enterprises to the greatest extent feasible to provide brokerage and investment management services. It makes a technical fix to replace the current reporting requirements to reflect the actual practices of the board with reporting on investment advisors and fund managers. And also requires the supplemental retirement plan to use the Office of State Procurement's website to notify potential providers that this actually exists and that we are procuring these types of services. So this doesn't, this is a technical fix and provides more transparency, as well as opportunities, advertising the opportunity to work with the Maryland Teachers and State Employees Supplemental Retirement Plan as well. So I ask for a favorable report on HB 909.
Thank you very much. Any questions of the sponsor? Okay. Is Rhonda Bell here from the Maryland Teachers State Employees Supplemental Retirement Plan?
I am. Good
Very good.
afternoon, Madam
Good
Chair, Mr. Vice Chair. On behalf of the board of the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans, I am here to offer our strong support of House Bill 909. Thank you, Delegate Learman, for sponsoring this legislation. And I would just characterize this as a cleanup bill. As she said, this is not going to substantially change anything in the law other than what we actually are practicing at MSRP. So it's just going to change the language so that when we do our annual report on MBE, we are actually answering questions that are germane to the supplemental retirement plans. So we do wish for a favorable report and we have no objections to this legislation.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for coming, Ms. Bell. And we're now going to turn to House Bill 734, Higher Education Student Financial Assistance, Alterations and Appropriations. And I believe this is Delegate Learman and Solomon who are presenting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm excited to be in front of your committee with a non-pension bill. This is a really exciting bill and I'm grateful to be here presenting it. This bill really improves access to higher education for students in Maryland by increasing funding to our state's major financial aid programs, as well as tweaking some of the requirements and fixing a really big problem, a fiscal cliff that currently exists for students who get the Guaranteed Access Grant. So just a little background, the Guaranteed Access Grant, or the GA grant, covers 100% of the need for the state's lowest income students. The max amount is capped at the total cost of attendance. And actually the number of awards has increased by 166% since 2015. The educational assistance grants, they are the EA grants. They are designed to meet 40% of the financial need at institutions, at four-year institutions, and 60% at community college for full-time students from low to middle income families. I don't think it's any secret that higher ed costs have risen exponentially over the past several decades. And in Maryland, we've done more than many states to try to decrease these tuition increases, but they do continue. And there are so many students who need this grant money but cannot access it. And there are some incredible organizations in the state, like some who will be giving oral testimony today, who are trying to help close that gap while also guiding students through the sometimes daunting process of applying for this funding and then getting to and through college. In FY21, there are over 9,000 EA eligible students on a wait list. And that will continue without more funding. And the maximum amount of the $3,000 EA grant has not changed since 1996, while the cost of tuition and the total cost of attendance has increased significantly. So this legislation increases funding for the program and makes several changes to increase support for students. So first, the program changes. This bill addresses what could be called a disagreement between MSBE and MHEC about the implementation of a phenomenal program that our speaker and our chair worked on, the Next Generation Scholars Maryland program. Students for this program pre-qualify in 8th, 9th, or 10th grade. This bill clarifies that the determination of family income required for this program is based on the year they qualify, not the year that they matriculate. Also, this bill enables organizations administering the Next Gen Scholars program to continue providing services to students while they are in college. That means that those organizations can continue working with students to get them not just to college, but also through college. And then the funding. This bill increases the maximum award for an education assistance grant from $3,000 to $7,000 to reflect cost of living and tuition increases over the years since it was created. It requires that if a GA grant needs to be adjusted based on increases in family income, that it should be done on more of a sliding scale basis, as developed by MPAC with input from the Financial Aid Advisory Council. And it mandates an appropriation of at least $112 million in the governor's annual budget bill for the Howard P. Rawlings Education Excellence Award. So expanding access to affordable education is critical for the success of our youth and for the future of our economy. And I urge you to vote favorably on HB 734. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call on anyone that might have a question about the bill, I just want to say that, first of all, thank you for bringing this bill forward. I know that you had input from various members of the House on this bill and DLS as well. But, you know, one of the things that has disturbed this committee greatly over the last several years is the number of students who otherwise qualify for help who don't get it, and therefore are not attending college and should be because they want to be. And I also will say that I was pleased, really pleased to have this year, as we approach this session, to have our colleges and universities come in and on their list of priorities, it wasn't just this new building or that new building, it was help for their students, particularly these students who need our help the most. So know that I want the committee, I'm telling you right up front, this is, if there's, and when you have a surplus, if there's a place you should go to help people out, it's these kids who want to go to college and deserve to go to college and qualify to get in the schools, but don't have the financial support that they need in our current apparatus. So thank you very much for bringing this forward. Does anybody on the committee have a question now? Oh, okay, Christ. How are you?
I'm good.
You know, I was looking at you out of the corner of my eye the whole time, you know, when I was saying, go ahead, Delegate Grice.
Yeah, the question I have, this is not a one-time cost, right? This is a recurring cost every year. Yeah. Okay, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah, and you know, Delegate Grice, that's a very fair thing to point out. And you know, you're going to hear me point things out like that all along the way, that we have to be very careful this year. That, you know, you have a surplus, you know, you can't spend it, the surplus. First of all, you need to park some of it. Secondly, you need to make sure that your expenditures, for the most part, are one time only, but there are some opportunities we have this year to do something really positive that we haven't been able to. And, you know, I hope the committee views this as one of them. It's very important. Delegate Beitzel.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just want to point out and ask a question. You know, Garrett County was a leader in setting up a program that would give free tuition to every student that qualified to get into the community college in Garrett County, and that bill's been expanded in other parts of the state. And one of the things that we faced when that happened was that the bill that was passed previously took away the money that the college, that our county was going to put into the college, subtracted that from the money that they would get from the state. And I just want to make sure that counties like Garrett County that step up and do the right thing to help these kids get to school aren't penalized because of those issues.
We'll make sure that's the case.
Thanks.
Okay. We have Cassie Motts here from College Bound Foundation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to Delegates Learman and Solomon for introducing this bill, which would be a game changer for Maryland students. My name is Cassie Motz. I'm the Executive Director of the College Bound Foundation in Baltimore, and I submit that this bill would be a game changer for 4 reasons. First of all, as the chairwoman pointed out, for students from families with limited resources who are high achieving across the state, all the way to Garrett County, this bill would provide much needed financial aid to attend college. Currently, Maryland ranks 30th out of the 50 states and the District of Columbia for total state aid, financial aid dollars for college. For such a wealthy state, we should be doing better. A college education can be the ticket to financial independence, a ticket into the middle class, and it increases the tax base. A college graduate earns $1 million more over the course of her or his lifetime than a student with only a high school degree. Second, as Delegate Learman pointed out, the amount of the education assistance grant, which is supposed to cover 40% of financial aid at a 4-year college, 60% at a 2-year, hasn't changed since 1996. And in the past 26 years, that award's buying power has decreased significantly. Thirdly, as Delegate Learman pointed out, this guaranteed access award, this GA cliff, is a huge problem. If a student falls off the cliff because he or she, her family or his family makes $100 more than the income threshold for the award, they lose out on the entire award. So the bill directs the Maryland Higher Education Commission to take care of that through a sliding scale. And I think that is going to help. Over 100 students last year lost out on their award and probably couldn't finish college because of this cliff. And then lastly, and this is an amendment that I'd like to propose, relates to verification, which is the cumbersome process by which the government confirms that information on financial aid applications is correct. Verification is incredibly time-consuming and burdensome for everyone involved, for students and for MHEC and for the universities. And what we're proposing is that MHEC, which currently verifies 60% of all applicants, that they come in line with the federal standard. In most years, the federal government puts through verification about 30% of their applicants. We propose that the bill be amended so that MHEC follows the federal standard, and that would be a win-win for 2 reasons. One, it would save MHEC the time and resources so they could focus on the administration of this complicated financial aid scheme that we have in Maryland. And then secondly, more students would actually go through the process in a smoother way and would actually be able to take advantage of the aid. So many of our students give up because verification is so complicated. They're entitled to the money, they've got the GPA, they've got the low family income to qualify, but verification just turns them away. So I would encourage this committee to consider that amendment to bring MHEC's verification in line with what the federal government does, depending on the year. This most recent year, the federal government actually didn't do verification because of COVID, but if Maryland State could follow the feds and verification, that would be wonderful. So thank you all. Madam Chair, thank you for your work throughout your tenure, but particularly on that Next Generation Scholars Bill from which so many students have benefited. Last year was the first graduating class, and we'll have another graduating class this year. So thank you. And I would encourage the committee to vote in favor of HB 734.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay. First generation college bound Joseph Fisher is in the room. Take yourself off mute. Thank you. Welcome, Joseph.
Wow. Thank you, Madam Chair. Wonderful to see you again. It's been a while. It's been a while. And I just want to say good afternoon to you and also Vice Chair Mark Chang, as I forgot to recognize him the last time I was here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here on behalf of First Generation College Bound and a member of the Maryland Alliance of College Affordability and Equity for HB 734, Higher Education Assistance Appropriations, submitted by Delegate Learman and Solomon. I just want you to know, we recognize the need of this bill has already been stated earlier, as it supports students awarded the Guaranteed Access Grant that are eligible for the full term of the award. That is a challenge, as already been stated, because this is students who are beating the odds and growing up in poverty to attend college and graduate. And I'll tell you, especially working with Next Generation Scholars, which we are a member now. However, as reported in the Maryland Higher Education report, 526 students lost their GA grant. And that was in the 2021 report. They experienced a GA cliff, which means in this cliff, a student attending a university, this means that the GA grant is reduced from $19,000 to $3,000 at a Maryland four-year institution. The impact of the loss is even greater at private colleges, as their cost is greater, leaving these students in with a greater financial cap, creating tremendous financial challenges to stay in school. One of our many students who will testify today, Amaya Ellis, experiencing a successful year at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, lost the GA grant due to being over income $400. Going from $14 to $3,000. I'll never forget that phone call. However, Amaya, beating the odds for a college degree, is currently in her junior year at the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Her retention, though, is due to her district state senator, delegates who supporting her, as well as student loans she had to take out. That's why she's still there. Recognizing the need of this financial loss, First Generation College Bound, we are recommending that when these students go over, that there be a dollar deduction. We need to be long-term committed to these students, not just for the moment, especially as her mother went over income because she was working just to earn extra money to make car payments. And that's a disgrace. And those are things we have to think about, trying not to be judgmental, as these parents want the best for these kids. In closing, we support also the increased financial aid for the financial aid pot of money. This is very important. You know, we're committed to students of poverty attending college. And I'll tell you, working with the Next Generation Scholar students, finding these students, that financial aid process is serious. We have to work one-on-one with these kids, establishing relationships to complete this process. We want to be long-term committed to these students. So we ask that you support House Bill 734 for these students of poverty to attend college and graduate with little to no debt. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're going to hear from Ms. Ellis now.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so as Mr. Fisher said, yes, these past 2 years of school has been really rough. It was all due because my mom had a little bit of increase from what she has made from unemployment to now her having a job. So it was really, really hard on my family because my mom wasn't able to qualify for a Parent Plus loan. So I had to continuously take out federal loans, which dropped my EFC. It actually increased it. So my federal grants were lower than expected. I had to reach out for extra help, but I still had to continuously take out loans and just to be able to afford books. I wasn't able to afford books my sophomore year in college because I had lost my GA grant. I called Mr. Fisher devastated. I was like, Mr. Fisher, I don't know what to do. But everything worked out. It got to a point to where as though taking out a loan was my only option because it got to the point where the university told me I could not enroll into my classes until I had most of the money. So it was pretty hard. I had to make a tough decision. And I'm here today hoping that next year will be so much better regarding to funding for school. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And may I ask you a question, if you don't mind? How much student debt have you accumulated now? Because we haven't been so generous.
I would say I'm almost at 10,000.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And what school do you go to?
I go to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore.
Very good. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think that concludes the bill hearing. On House Bill 734, again, Delegate Lehrman, thank you for rolling with us today. Thank you for bringing this bill forward.
Thank you
Have a
all.
great day. Okay. We're now going to move to Delegates Young and Ebersol, the Maryland Transit Administration Collective Bargaining, Supervisors and Surgeons.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Delegate Pat Young, to the Baltimore County Delegation and member of the Appropriations Committee. Happy to present HB 858, Maryland Transit Administration Police Collective Bargaining, Supervisors and Sergeants. Put simply, this legislation expands the list of Maryland Transit Administration employees that are authorized to participate in collective bargaining with MTA to include supervisors and sergeants in the MTA police. Currently, while they are represented by a bargaining unit, they do not have the ability to collectively bargain with MTA. Their colleagues that they work with are able to collectively bargain. Other folks and similar units of smaller police forces are able to collectively bargain, but the MTA police officers are not. So just getting down simply to it, we're allowing for, as we have in the past, these folks to collectively bargain if they so choose to do so with MTA, which is currently not provided to them. And also, as we know, have a better and more substantial role in the workplace in which they work, the future of their benefits, as well as the opportunity for them to consider and move forward in their careers, and also recruit and provide a better working environment for their recruitment purposes and joining others. I believe I have a panel. We were having some trouble finding to getting them into the room, but if they are here, I believe we had Sergeant Jordan from the MTA Police, who would like to present to the committee, if that's all right, Madam Chair.
That's right. Are there any, first of all, are there any questions of the sponsor before we go there? I see none. Okay. We can move to, I have two people signed up here, Mr. Jordan and Nita Hodges.
Ms. Hodges may not be able to join us, but I know that we were trying to get Mr. Jordan into the room.
Okay, Mr. Jordan.
I have not seen a Mr. Jordan, and I've asked multiple times for individuals to identify themselves. But I do not see those individuals in the waiting room.
Understood. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Make sure to coordinate with them after. They do have written testimony, so you do have that in lieu of their actual presentation.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that
Madam
concludes.
Chair, he's here.
Who?
Mr. Sergeant Jordan's in the room.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Yes, there you are. I see you. Yes, thank you, Sergeant Jordan. Please proceed.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Sergeant Kendrick Jordan. I've been a member of the MTA Police Force for the last 23 years. The reason we're seeking collective bargaining is because otherwise we have no redress for any issues or any way to abrogate working conditions. As you may or may not know, it is against the law for us to file grievances, so we have no administrative process to which we can address our issues. Some of the issues we face are on call, and as you know, our on call status is for a week at a time. We are not allowed to be compensated while we're on call. The only compensation we get is when we actually come to work, which is in violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act. And whether we're on light duty or full duty, we still are responsible to be on call. I've had the instance where I'd recently come back from ankle surgery and had to work 16 hours on light duty on my day off as a product of on call. We have to respond within a certain time period. We are required not to drink, or, we have to keep our phones on us at all times. So those are just some of the things that we figure collective bargaining could address. The work conditions, we'll be able to negotiate, have a dialogue. There's no policy for our on call. There's nothing that says the parameters which you are allowed to come to work, when you're required to come to work, or how they select if you are or not allowed to work. So those are some of the key things. The staffing, understanding that there's a lack of viable candidates. sergeants, depending on when we're working, are responsible for 14 to 15 people at any given moment. Whereas if in your training, they tell you that your average span of control should be 3 to 5 individuals. So we are looking to possibly abrogate these situations or have them dealt with through collective bargaining, because not everything requires litigation. But at this point, since we have no administrative redress, all we could do is either suck it up and deal with it or seek the litigation route. And that's not necessary in everything. You don't need a hammer to address some things that may be ant in size. So we would like to be favorably considered for this collective bargaining moving forward.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question? Where do you patrol?
Yes, ma'am. MTA's jurisdiction is anywhere owned, operated, and leased upon by the MTA. So I personally am responsible for squad. We cover the northern end of the city, basically from North Avenue North to the Pennsylvania line on the light rail, buses, and subway. But those are the things we're responsible for: marked commuter train, subway, bus, light rail, and a commuter bus service.
How about toll booths?
No, ma'am.
You're not the
No,
one?
ma'am. That's Maryland Transportation Authority.
Okay, thank you very much. You answered my question. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate the time.
We appreciate you being here.
Have a great day.
Okay, we're now going to move to House Bill 605. Delegate Resnick.
Apologies. Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of Appropriations. House Bill 605 is a bill that would require the Natural Resource Police Force to develop and implement a hiring and promotion plan to increase diversity and better reflect the demographics of the state. I greatly respect the work that NRP does in protecting our waterways and enforcing our state's fish and wildlife protection regulations. However, there is a serious problem in the department. The Natural Resources Police looks nothing like the communities they protect. And by way of an example, currently the police force, the entire police force is approximately 8% African American. The department has not had a Black female officer in 24 years. This problem began significantly in 2016, and despite a consent decree existing within the department, the problem has not been fixed. On top of the low numbers of Black officers in the department as a whole, the proportion of Black officers who are promoted is significantly smaller than their white counterparts. Of the most recent list of promotions released just over a month ago, not one of the 46 officers slated for promotion was Black. These figures include commissioned officers as well as non-commissioned ranks of corporal and sergeant. As a result of this unequal promotion regimen, the Natural Resources Police are left with a force that does not reflect the demographics of the state, and the leadership does not reflect the demographics of the force. The bill before you is a step in the right direction to remedy that problem. It would require the Natural Resources Police to develop a plan that would bring the demographics of the force in line with the demographics of the state as a whole and report on a yearly progress of the plan's implementation. Additionally, the bill imposes budgetary penalties if the NRP fail to meet this requirement. Again, I want to reiterate, this bill only requires the department to put a plan together and stay on track with the plan. It does not mandate immediate change, only asks that the department actually stand up for its officers and put a plan together. There are concerns from the FOP and SLEOLA about this bill, and I would like to take a minute to address them right now. The first concern, and I believe probably their major one, is that delaying the current promotions list, and the bill does require the current promotion list to be delayed from implementation until such a plan is implemented. That delaying the current promotion list would hurt officers that are on the list who are scheduled to earn their promotions. And though I sympathize with their argument, I am distraught that it took this bill after 5 years of inaction to raise their concerns. The NRP and the DNR secretary propose new policies all the time. The department could pull a work group together and issue a policy well before this bill would ever take effect in October, jeopardizing no one's promotion. It would only require the will of the parties involved to fix the problem. The second concern is that the financial penalties will hurt their ability to purchase necessary equipment. The $500,000 annual withholding in the bill until compliance is met is no different than any other normal holding of funds that this committee does on a regular basis in budget language every year. It is not a cut, and it will not affect the department's ability to buy necessary equipment. It also does not take effect, the $500,000 penalty does not take effect until December 2023. Again, plenty of time for the department to come into compliance. Finally, the opposition will state that a different bill, Senate Bill 673, sponsored by Senator Bailey, would solve this problem. That bill, which I do support, simply transfers hiring authority of NRP officers directly to the secretary and has some provisions requiring the advertisement of positions to be targeted to racial, ethnic, and underrepresented communities. Advertising alone without this legislation I'm presenting today will have no concrete effect to diversify the NRP workforce. With these simple changes to the way the NRP police operate, we can have a much more diverse and force, one that is reflective of the state as a whole. I want to thank you for your time, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you. Any questions of the sponsor, please? Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. We now have Stephen Mews, President Black Officers Association. Are you here?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm retired Captain Stephen Mews, current president of the Maryland Natural Resources Police Black Officers Association, commonly referred to as the BOA, and I represent the men and women of your districts. I'm here to urge this committee to support House Bill 605. The BOA is committed to being open about our persistence in achieving our goal of a police agency that reflects the state of Maryland's demographics and should be composed of a minimum of 31% Black officers and not the current 8%. We have serious ongoing issues with hiring and promotional process at NRP that has and is preventing us from achieving that goal. We have repeatedly raised these issues with Secretary Hadaway Riccio of DNR and Colonel Baker of Natural Resources Police for over the past 5 years. Sadly, our concerns were summarily ignored, and the Secretary allowed the Colonel to change the promotional policy. The BOA implored the Secretary and the Colonel to refer to the consent decree and to consult with the Chief of the Office of Fair Practice prior to making any of these changes. We warned them that if this process that they were implementing were allowed to continue, the negative impact on the promotional opportunities for minority and Black officers within NRP will be immediate and non-reversible for years to come. Unfortunately, the Secretary and Colonel ignored our pleas and continuously implemented policies and practices to eliminate diversity within NRP. They have failed to hire minority officers at a rate to change the demographics of NRP to bring it in line with the demographics of the state. They have allowed change to the promotion and hiring process several times, designed to keep Black officers and other minorities from advancing. For that reason above, I strongly urge this committee to vote Bill 605. On behalf of the men and women of the Black Officers Association, the Maryland Natural Resources Police, I would like to thank you for allowing us the time to testify in front of your committee. And if anyone has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them. Respectfully, retired Captain Mews.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, Delegate Henson.
Hey, what's up, man? You call me?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. or Officer Mews, for your testimony. Could you help us understand the impact it would have if we had a more diverse NRP?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Certainly. Could you help us understand the impact it would have on the state if we had a more diverse Natural Resources Police Department?
Sure. Representation matters. And right now, if you live in Cecil County, Harford County, Howard County, Baltimore City, Frederick, Montgomery County, Allegheny County, Washington County, Garrett County, you won't see a Black officer. So that means if you're hunting, fishing, or if you go to a state park and you're a child, most of us picked our careers from what we saw growing up. It would also help in how people feel they're being policed. If you're not a white person and you are recreating in any of those counties, you're not going to see anyone that looks like you that gives you a sense of comfort or just familiarity. I think it's one of the biggest crimes that we're doing. And as in the ranks of promotions, just imagine your entire career, you never had a supervisor that, if you were Black, you never had a supervisor that looked like you. We have 2 Black lieutenants in the entire state of Maryland. That's the entire state of Maryland. And they're both slated to retire within 3 to 4 years. Representation matters, and representation in policing matters. And that's why I think it's very important.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're very welcome. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for being here. We're now going to turn to Veronica Bruns.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and distinguished members of the committee. I'm Veronica Bruns, a corporal with the Maryland Natural Resources Police and the treasurer of the State Law Enforcement Officers Labor Alliance, also known as SLEOLA, which is the exclusive representative for approximately 1,800 active state law enforcement officers, including the Maryland Natural Resources Police. In SLEOLA's role as the exclusive representative in collective bargaining for pay, benefits, and working conditions of the Maryland Natural Resources Police under State Personnel and Pensions 3-502 and the Executive Order 1996-1113, we are opposed to House Bill 605. The promotional process is a mandatory subject of bargaining that SLEOLA has the sole responsibility to negotiate for the best of all of our represented members. SLEOLA strives to have a fair and transparent promotional process for all of our members. House Bill 605 removes SLEOLA from negotiating the promotional process and leaves it solely within Maryland Natural Resources Police management to decide their promotional plan. Therefore, SLEOLA does have other proposed legislation that has been introduced for the 2022 legislative session that will allow for more flexibility and to improve the promotional process. Further, if under this House bill, promotions were not permitted to continue until October of 2023, it would be extremely detrimental to many of the remaining officers on the current promotional list, which expires in November of 2022. Many of these officers know that they will be promoted within the next year. Holding promotions would affect their livelihoods and their families, not only in the short term, but also into retirement. Holding up promotions does not hold command staff accountable. It does not hold the department accountable. Rather, it does hurt the current officers down to the lowest level. These officers, not command staff and those who run the department, would be more affected if the secretary would ask the comptroller to withhold $500,000. This money is used for necessary equipment and personnel to maintain officer safety, effective radio communications, maintenance and acquisition of much needed vessels and vehicles, and most importantly, the hiring of additional much needed officers. Therefore, on behalf of the State Law Enforcement Labor Alliance, I respectfully ask that the committee find an unfavorable report House Bill 605.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I lost her. Where'd she go? Ms. Bruns, just curious, I have no idea. Do you have the numbers of those who, I guess, applied for the Natural Resources Police in terms of minority applications?
I don't have them in minority applications. I do know over the past 10 years, we went from around 1,800 applicants down to about 523. We do, as the SLEOLA, recognize that we do need diversity. We're not opposed to that at all. However, our opposition to this is merely the fact that you're taking the collective bargaining aspect out of the bill with this bill. Part of our amendments into Senator Bailey's is to have a study, because we don't believe that it's just our Black officers that are being discriminated against in that disparity. We have LGBTQ+, we have Asians, we have Native Americans and American Indians, as well as Hispanic, and then also members of 2 or more races that are fighting this disparity within the agency and that discrimination. And we'd like to see that reach across the entire board, not just one demographic.
Okay, great. I'm just curious to see the numbers. I'll work offline. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Bruns.
Thank you, Delegate Bridges.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Ms. Bruns, for being here as well. Just a quick question. You talked about this might help hurt in collective bargaining because you aren't able to do this through the collective bargaining process. When is the next time that you go into negotiations for a new contract?
We just had our contract signed last week for this 3-year contract. So again, we would that's why we're asking that we would still remain in the promotional process by law and regulation as well. It's the executive order.
Okay, so for the next 3 years, you're still, I guess, in the other bill, you would rather do it through a study than through this bill, which is asking for, you know, something that we do through budget language already to occur before we would expend the 500,000.
Yes, we just want to see where you can't build on a weakness unless you know where your weakness is. And we believe that the weakness is throughout the agency. It's on multiple levels of the agency, not just the hiring and the promotional process. We do believe that those are key pieces of where there's disparity. However, it's not the only place in the agency. And we would rather see it being taken care of as a whole rather than piecemealed together.
Gotcha. But one final question, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
In terms of your list that you have for promotions now, do you know when you would do those promotions? And also, is it a matter of people being on that list that are ready for the promotion, or what is that process that you would, I guess, interview folks to make sure that they are eligible for the promotion? I'm just not sure what your process is, because earlier you said that the people on the list would suffer. So I feel like the list is already a done deal, or is there more to the process that I'm thinking?
So the process starts with a promotional test, which consists of written, a interview, and a resume portion. And then it falls underneath of state personnel and pensions under Title VII, I believe, which is where we've had a lot of issues. And that's what the Senate bill would pull us out from underneath of personnel and pensions, so we can make a fair and transparent process. But once those scores are put in, there is a banded system that falls underneath the personnel and pensions. And from there, there's a randomization. And that's what we don't agree with, is randomization, that if you're testing for a rank, you should get that rank. That hurts everybody across the board, including our minorities. As Loyola, there is a published list. We are the only people outside of NRP management and HR that can see that list. And they do go straight down the list until that list expires or has been completely ran out. And it will expire in November of 2022. However, there is in the consent decree an extension for an additional 6 months. So there are officers, including minorities and Black officers, that could potentially be promoted within the next few months, because we do have people retiring in spaces that do need to be filled, that now they're going to be hurt, and that additional income and that rank may never occur. And then if they retest, they could lose that spot. It's questionable as to where things will get from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a great day, and thank you for being here, Veronica.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Delegate Resnick. Okay, we're going to move to the Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Next, we'll move on to House Bill 567, Delegate D. Barnes, Prince George's Financial Services Corporation funding. Delegate Barnes, please proceed when you're ready.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Listen, won't be before you guys long. I am here to present on House Bill 567 to appropriate dollars for FSC First. The grant for FSC First would be to help them with marketing and advertising for our small businesses in Prince George's County, to provide access to capital, training, technical assistance, and other resources, whereby improving a small business capacity, resiliency, and enabling them to competitively be marketed in the marketplace. During this pandemic, if it has shown us anything, that our small businesses are hurting, they need access to capital. But in order for FSC to be effective, they need to be able to market to those companies to help those small businesses where they are overwhelmingly affected, with many having to close their doors because of lack of access to capital and the training and technical assistance. These funds would assist small minority-owned, women-owned businesses recover and provide job opportunities, which ultimately helps our economy, which in turn improve the economy conditions within our state and Prince George's County. And for those reasons, I would ask for a favorable report on House Bill 567.
Thank you very much, Delegate Barnes. Are there any questions for Bill's sponsor? This afternoon, we have joining us Shelley Gross-Wade with PSC First Prince George's Financial Service Corporation, providing favorable testimony. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Delegate Barnes, for the introduction of the bill and your sponsorship. I'm not sure why my picture isn't showing on the screen on my side, but can you see me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm not sure why the picture is not showing, so I apologize for that. I will proceed. House Bill 567, as has been mentioned, is being introduced on behalf of FSC First. Before the record, I am Shelley Gross-Wade, President and CEO of FSC First, the Prince George's Financial Services Corporation, trading as FSC First Board of Directors, supports this House Bill 567, which authorizes the Maryland Department of Commerce to fund an operating grant of $420,000 to assist FSC First with its internal capacity building in fiscal year 2023. The FSC First is the premier non-traditional lender in Prince George's County. Our mission is to provide innovative and creative financing solutions to small, minority, women, and veteran-owned businesses, primarily in Prince George's County and throughout the state of Maryland. We have served the local businesses with distinction for more than 43 years. FSC First is a 501c3 nonprofit organization designated by the U.S. Small Business Administration to serve as a certified development company in the administration of the SBA 504 program. This program encourages eligible business owners to transition from occupying their leased properties and leasing machinery and equipment to actually acquiring long-term fixed assets and owner-occupied commercial real estate. These capital investments support wealth creation while also supporting the commercial tax base in Prince George's County and the state of Maryland. We believe it is the first step to legacy wealth for African-American businesses in particular. Also, FSC First is designated by the U.S. Treasury to serve as a community development financial institution, also referred to as a CDFI. As such, FSC serves as a Small Business Administration Community Advantage 7A guaranteed lender. This allows the direct loans we make from our $5.5 million revolving loan fund to qualify for up to a 75 to 85% SBA guarantee throughout the life of the loan. This distinguished public-private partnership between FSC First, Prince George's County, Maryland, and 12 to 15 FDIC-insured financial institutions allows FSC First to directly finance disadvantaged businesses that cannot qualify otherwise for traditional bank financing.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. I'll take questions.
Yes, ma'am. Are there any questions for Ms. Gross-Wade? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 567. Committee will now move on to House Bill 602. Delegate Crosby, Board of Public Works, Southerly Plantation Operating Grant. Delegate Crosby, Vice Chairman, good to see you. Please proceed when you're ready.
Good to see you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Brian Crosby, House Bill 602, Board of Public Works, Historic Southerly Plantation Operating Grant. This bill provides a total of $1.5 million in funding for historic Southerly from fiscal year 24 to fiscal year 26. For many of you who are familiar, but some of you aren't, historic Southerly is a UNESCO site of memory and National Historic Landmark dedicated to telling the whole story of the Southerly Plantation. Through the work of descendants of the enslaved, the owners, and the laborers, historic Southerly has been bringing the community together to foster a healing and understanding dialogue about all parts of their legacy including slavery. Historic Sotterly has been dedicated to the holistic teaching for more than 2 decades, longer than most sites in the entire country. It is a model for other historical sites around the nation for conversations about equity. There are 94 acres of land, over 20 historic buildings in need of maintenance and infrastructure improvements to ensure the preservation for generations to come. 2 of those biggest restorations will be the Manor House and the Slave Cabin, along with new restrooms, collection storage, and improvements addressing enhanced safety and efficiency. Historic Sotterly is working with MSDE to provide educational programs and expand their curriculum to include environmental programs. Sotterly is also seeking to expand its Common Ground initiative, which brings together descendants and our community to provide education, resources, remembrance, and to aid in healing through interpretation and authentic history. This is an important community resource for education, remembrance, and volunteerism. Historic Sotterly is the standard in holistic education that teaches all aspects of our shared history. For these reasons, I urge for a favorable rule.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman Crosby. And joining him today, we have 3 witnesses who provided favorable testimony. First is Nancy Easterling with the Historic Sotterly, Inc.
Good afternoon. Thank you, members of the committee, for allowing me to testify. Well, Brian did such a great job telling you who we are. In case you're not familiar with Sotterly, we are unique in the amount of time we've been dedicated to telling a holistic story. Really, for over 25 years, we have been made this a dedication for this site, but we have been expanding it greatly over the last 10 years with new tours, programming, and initiatives. It hasn't been easy, though, because we operate without an endowment and need to earn the income necessary to make all of these advances. We've never faltered, but this would come at a critical time that will allow us to expand those programs and address critical infrastructure needs that will allow us to be safer, more efficient, and serve our community better, as well as important preservation projects, because with the 300 year-old National Historic Landmark, you're not going to get those resources back if we lose them. Sotterly has never been more necessary in a national conversation, and we are dedicated to continuing to be leaders of that conversation for the state. Your investment in this bill and in Sotterly will truly be an investment in all those we serve. And I thank you for your time and your attention today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Easterling. Also, we have Ms. Gwendolyn Bankins with the Historic Sotterly. If you're going to mute yourself, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm very favorable of House Bill 602. I am a direct descendant of the Kane family who was enslaved at Sotterly, and I currently sit on the executive board as a secretary, and I'm also the chairperson of the Preservation, Restoration, and Interpretation. I have a 44-year history with Sotterly. I learned about Sotterly in the 7th grade. This is fascinating to me because I was able to speak to 115 fifth graders. The journey of Sotterly was apparent in the history that was being shared. History should not be hidden, even when it's unfavorable and it talks about the pain that others went through, because we must learn from our history. The Sotterly Descendants Program has been holistically healing individuals because we're sharing our experiences and we have a common heritage. So I would definitely like to encourage individuals to support this bill because we need to learn about our history so we don't repeat it. We need to visit these, and we need to visit the locations and make sure that we preserve the living history of the buildings and structures and lifestyles of those who were enslaved there. So we need to remember, reflect, and honor them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bankins, for being here and sharing your family's story. We also have Ms. Janice Briscoe with Historic Sotterly. Ms. Janice Briscoe.
I think she may have had trouble entering the room.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for Ms. Easterling or Ms. Bankins or the bill sponsor? Seeing none, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. That concludes the bill hearing for House Bill 602. The committee will now move on to House Bill 579, Delegate Cox, Military Veterans Trust Fund, the David Perez Military Heroes Act, and 22 a day. Delegate Cox, please proceed when you're ready. Okay, we'll move on to House Bill 1037, Delegate Cullison, Higher Education Senatorial, and Delegate
Chair.
Scott. Delegate Cox.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was stuck in the waiting room, but I thank you for the opportunity today. Mr. Chair and Chair McIntosh and committee members. House Bill 579 establishes a grant program for veterans suffering from post-traumatic stress and other disorders, seeking relief and needing financial assistance to obtain complementary and alternative medical treatments. HB 579 is named in honor of Army veteran David Perez. He was a Marylander, a veteran, a patriot with a big heart, and a friend of mine who also served here in the legislature on different staffs. He served in the United States Army for 11 years and was a combat veteran. After bravely and honorably serving his country, he dedicated his life to helping other veterans deal with their challenges from their time in the military. But in the fall of 2020, David's own challenges caught up with him and we lost him way too soon. I'm honored to have his mother, Mrs. Goodpaster, here to testify as well in support of this legislation. According to a 2021 study at Brown University, the rate of veteran suicides ages 18 to 34 has increased by 76% since 2005. Just to give you an understanding of the loss of life, during combat, over 7,000 were killed since post 9/11. However, more than 31,000 soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen have died because of suicide since 9/11. According to the Census Bureau's recent statistics, there's over 350,000 veterans living in Maryland. Minorities make up about 138,000 of those, and over 50,000 of them are women. Veterans represent the length and breadth of our population, and so does the problem with veteran suicide. This doesn't hit only on certain demographics of Maryland's population. It hits all because of the military service spans all demographics. The expanded forms of treatment in this legislation will make available more versatile care for those at risk of suicide. Just to give you an example, CAM is comparative and alternative medical treatments. I yesterday had the opportunity to visit with a 98-year-old World War II veteran in Hagerstown who explained to me that after 50 years of being quiet about his experiences in freeing Dachau, he finally was able to talk about and to explain to even youth what he went through to defend our freedoms. And I was very honored to speak with him. And one of the things that he pointed out was the fact that the opportunity to heal both personally, spiritually, and emotionally was necessary to allow him to be able to talk and to share his experiences. And that's exactly what our veterans need today. And that's what this bill will provide. As you can see in the financial report, there is a very minimal cost. It's able to be handled within the Maryland Veterans Fund and will not cost any general fund payments. So with that, I look forward to hearing Mrs. Laura Goodpaster's testimony. And I respectfully ask the committee to provide a favorable report for House Bill 579, the Maryland Veterans Trust Fund CAMFOR Veterans Grant Program established as the David Perez Military Heroes Act, end 22 a day. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, Ms. Laura Goodpaster, thank you very much for being here. Please provide your testimony in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for committee for allowing me to honor my son's legacy, and Delegate Cox for including me in this testimony. He covered most of what I would have said, so I want to speak directly about what the bill means to me. I have veteran friends and family members who don't have the resources to obtain alternative therapies to help with PTSD and other mental issues that arise when our veterans come home from war. So it's home to me to try to provide as many resources as the state can in order to help prevent the suicides that we've seen rising. So with that being said, I asked for a favorable vote on House Bill 579, and I appreciate opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goodpaster, for being here and providing your testimony. Are there any questions from the members of the Appropriations Committee for Ms. Goodpaster? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 579. Well, the committee will now move on to House Bill 1037, Delegate Collison, Higher Education, Senatorial, and Delegate Scholarship Qualifications and Limitations. Delegate Collison, please proceed when you're ready. Delegate Collison. Delegate Collison.
She said she should be joining the waiting.
I believe she should be joining the waiting room shortly.
Thank you, Ms. Wareheim.
We can move on to Delegate Henson if you'd like.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to House Bill 1037. We'll move on to House Bill 540, Delegate Henson, Agriculture, University of Maryland Extension, Urban Farmer Assistance. Delegate Henson, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, colleagues, for allowing me to present House Bill 540. What the bill does is it puts our urban farms on equal footing for our state agricultural training and technical assistance with our more traditional or large-scale farms. I embarked on this journey by listening and meeting with urban farmers who expressed to me the challenges and the needs that they have. And one of the challenges and needs that they expressed was the need for technical support and training. The need for things like business skill training, training on local laws and regulations, how to obtain organic certification, food safety certifications, and handling practices. We have a lot of urban spaces that have been able to be successfully converted into farms, but in order to convert that into a business and to bring that food to the community for local distribution, there's technical support that our urban farmers need. If you notice in the testimony, we were able to get all favorables from those who submitted written testimony. There are 23 written favorable testimonies for us to look at and to take a perspective from those urban farmers of what it is exactly that they need. In addition to the written testimony, we have several members who are signed up today to testify orally and will be available for questions, as am I. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Delegate Henson. Are there any questions from the committee for the bill sponsor? This afternoon, we have 6 individuals who are providing favorable testimony. Each witness will provide 2-minute testimony. First, we have Craig Bayrodi with the University of Maryland College Park.
Great, thank you very much, Chairman Chang. I appreciate that. And thank you, Delegate Henson, also for sponsoring this. My name is Craig Bayrodi, and I serve as the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. I have the privilege of also serving as the director of the statewide University of Maryland Extension Program. As you're probably aware, Extension has a long history of serving the citizens of Maryland. Last year, we served over 400,000 citizens, 50,000 youth, 5,000 volunteers. And Extension is viewed, certainly in the state of Maryland, as a trusted source of information and education. With HB 540, we're seeking funding for 2 positions focused on urban agriculture to address a growing issue of food insecurity across the state. These positions are 1, horticulture and crop production. The other position is in farm agribusiness management. We currently have 1 individual located in Baltimore City. Her name is Neith Little. She's the lead co-author of a handbook of strategies for urban agriculture success, which is one of the few documents like this that you'll find anywhere in the United States. But her position is a local position. It's focused primarily serving Baltimore City urban farmers. The proposed positions would enable University of Maryland Extension to dedicate much more time serving urban farmers across Maryland. Through education, applied research, and technical assistance, we'll work to advance production of food in an urban environment, which is a very, very difficult and unusual environment compared to the rural environment in which to produce food. There's so many needs in terms of accessing food where food deserts exist. A robust urban ag industry will help contribute to job creation, food accessibility, food justice, food safety, economic enhancement, as well as greater family connections of local communities, STEM education of our youth, protection of our vulnerable watersheds, and the like. There's a lot of barriers to producers, and they need a variety of training needs in financial services, access to land, access to buildings, pest management, labor, water, navigating local policies. And these barriers make it very difficult for urban farmers to balance food production, creating jobs and income generation. University of Maryland is uniquely positioned to leverage the proposed positions to create cross-disciplinary programs across agriculture, food systems, youth development, healthy eating and nutrition, personal finance, home and community gardening, and natural resource management. Extension also has a strong network of partner organizations from state agencies to regional nonprofits to local community leaders that would benefit these new positions. I want to thank you for your time and consideration. I urge favorable support of HB 540. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bayrodi. Next, we have Colby Ferguson, Maryland Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Colby Ferguson on behalf of Maryland Farm Bureau, and we support House Bill 540. I think Dean Bayrodi did a great job of explaining how the tools would be brought to the table with these two new individuals. And as someone that sits as the chair of our Extension Advisory Council for Frederick County, I work very closely with our 4-H and 4-H and all of our ag agents there in Frederick County, and see the value that they put. And honestly, when you look at the urban sector and the urban agriculture sector, they've been kind of left to fend for themselves for a long time. And so I believe these two positions are valuably needed. The research that can be brought in through the University of Maryland, as well as the tools that can be used to help these individuals out. So we encourage a favorable report on House Bill 540.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ferguson. Next, we have Ms. Robin Jessica Clark with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be here today. Robin Clark with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation in support of HB 540. I'd like to take a minute to speak to the opposition of this bill. I know you see zero opposition, but in my mind, whenever there's a budget ask coming in, the opposition is every other good budget item that you have in your hearts or minds, or that comes before you into the committee. And I just want to speak to, again, the need for this, the accountability that's embedded in the legislation as it's crafted, and then the longevity too. There is a need. Dean Bayrodi described the current situation. The University of Maryland Extension is a premier outfit providing technical and training assistance to Maryland's farmers. So we need that outfit to represent the fact that there are also urban farmers in our state that are deserving of that support. Right now, the Baltimore city agent, as I hear it anecdotally, is driving to Prince George's County to try to help out. We need a force multiplier for the work that needs to be done in Baltimore and statewide. Accountability. Again, others, the sponsor and the dean have listed, it's very specific, this legislation. So you'll see exactly where these dollars are going. These requirements, what we put in there, help with bookkeeping, accounting, marketing, help with the good agriculture practices gap certification. These are very specific asks that we've heard from urban farmers and urban farm service providers in Maryland. And that's where it's in there. You see where the money's going. Finally, a word on longevity. There's a catch-all at the end of each of the charges for these extension agents for what they will do going forward. And that work is responding to the needs ongoing for urban farmers. So if all these things that we've detailed out, if it comes to pass, that we've done all the training we need on those, then going forward, they will consult with urban farmers and say, at this stage, are you looking at expansion? Are you looking at land acquisition? Are you looking at reaching a new market? And that flexibility is built in there for longevity too. So for these reasons, Chesapeake Bay Foundation supports this legislation that will add technical and training assistance to urban farmers. Urban farms help preserve green spaces in our developed areas. They help filter water, clean the air. And finally, they help provide access to healthy foods and vegetables for all Marylanders. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Clark. Next, we have Stephen Darcy with Prince George's Soil Conservation District.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank Delegate Henson for sponsoring this important legislation. My name is Steve Darcy. I'm the district manager for Prince George's Soil Conservation District. And on behalf of my Board of Supervisors, we also support House Bill 540. As everybody knows and has mentioned, there's a tremendous need to provide additional guidance and expertise to this growing urban, the growing number of urban and peri-urban and community producers across this great state. The addition of 2 statewide University of Maryland Extension agents that would solely focus on urban agriculture would really be a great help to this cause. Soil conservation districts and Extension have a great working relationship throughout the decades. Extension has a long history of providing top quality guidance to farmers throughout Maryland. And today the need is greater than ever as this new version of agriculture is growing. To best serve urban farmers, technical assistance from Extension agents with cutting edge expertise in the latest research and urban agribusiness development, crop management, and planning is crucial to their success. This growing land use has a potential for a myriad of benefits related to food security, economic development, environmental stewardship, and community health. As we strive to support this growing industry, our Soil Conservation District staff have worked very closely with the University of Maryland Extension urban agriculture educator in Baltimore City. 2 recent county reports, the Food Security Task Force recommendations, the Climate Action Plan in Prince George's, both reference the importance of expanding urban agriculture as a strategy to support the county's resilience to climate change and food insecurity. Soil Conservation District's urban, our Prince George's Soil Conservation District urban ag conservation program supports urban farmers with development of soil conservation and water quality plans. But currently, in addition to conservation planning that address soil and water conservation resources, our urban ag conservation planner is triaging non-soil and water conservation related questions that are better suited to the expertise of an Extension agent. It would be more efficient and effective for the soil conservation planner to connect with farmers, to connect farmers with an Extension agent that is conducting specialized research and programs.
Mr. Darcy, if you could please summarize.
Yes. So the Prince George's Soil Conservation District, we would welcome any opportunity to work with additional Extension agents and look forward to providing input on research programming efforts to best suit our Prince George's County constituents engaged in urban agriculture. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Next, we have David Tana with Buy Fresh, Buy Local.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the House Appropriations Committee, and delegates Henson, Chang, and Jones for sponsoring this bill. My name is David Tana, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of Buy Fresh, Buy Local Chesapeake, a regional chapter of a national program coordinated by the Chesapeake Bay Foundation in strong support of House Bill 540. My personal journey into the food system began when I participated in an alternative break through the University of Maryland, where I learned about urban agriculture and food insecurity through hands-on service. It was then that I came to understand not only how important urban farms can be in terms of supporting historically underserved or marginalized communities, but also that if you eat food, you are part of the agricultural system and should be invested in it. Buy Fresh, Buy Local Chesapeake works to educate the public on the many benefits of buying local, environmental, economical, human health related, and beyond. We publish a local food guide that provides a listing by county of CSAs, farmers markets, farm-to-table restaurants, pasture-based meats and dairy, honey, local breweries and vineyards, sustainable seafood, and other local goods across the state of Maryland. This year's upcoming guide will include more than 36 more farms from the last edition, many of which are in urban areas. We'll also be including a completely new section of the guide featuring community farms such as Atia Wells, Bliss Meadows in Baltimore City, and Gerardo Martinez's Wild Kid Acres right here in Anne Arundel County, both of which provide unique opportunities to engage the public and connect them to the growing urban agricultural movement. To support the growth of urban farmers and increase the ability of Marylanders to buy fresh and buy local, we support the addition of 2 University of Maryland Extension staff dedicated to working exclusively with urban farmers. In fact, this is something that the urban farming community has asked for specifically, in the hopes that they may continue to do the good work they do and support their local communities. For these reasons, Buy Fresh, Buy Local strongly supports House Bill 540 and urges the committee's favorable report on the bill. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tana. Next, we have Linda Jones with Elements of Nature Urban Farm.
Good afternoon, Madam. Excuse me, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Linda Jones, and I am here today to in support of House Bill 540. I am an urban farmer. My farm is Elements of Nature. I'm also an at-large board member representing urban farming interests on the Southern Maryland Agricultural Development Commission. This legislation is key to supporting urban farms in Maryland and promoting more Marylanders to join the urban farming movement. The University of Maryland Extension currently provides some wonderful services, and I've seen their good work through education programs in home gardening and community gardening. However, urban farming enterprises who also grow and support our local and regional food systems, to include the direct CSAs and farmers markets throughout our local communities, need a broader level of expertise and a dedicated coordinator who is a point person for these growers. Currently, just in PG County, Prince George's County alone, there are 40 urban farms documented by the Soil Conservation District, and that number is steadily increasing and diversified across Prince George's County alone. There is only one urban ag specialist in the entire state who supports urban ag, and that position is in Baltimore County. However, we need help in the remainder of the counties where emerging are all around us, urban farms, urban gardens. Some of this is in a direct result of what happened during COVID, when many families could not find fresh foods in grocery stores. Shelves were empty. However, the local farmers, the urban farmers, were the boots on the ground to get that food readily and available to citizens in one simple phone call. So adding these two specialists in urban ag to the University of Maryland Extension will fill a critical education and training gap to help urban farmers in Prince George's County and other areas of the state to not only survive, but to thrive. Thank you for the time, and I urge the committee's favorable report of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jones. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the witnesses? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 540. The committee will now go back to House Bill 1037. Delegate Cullison, Higher Education Senatorial Delegate Scholarships, Qualifications and Limitations. Delegate Cullison.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your indulgence in my tardiness. I was able to finish up some bills in HGO. Thank you to the members of the committee. I don't get to present in front of you very often, and I have to say it's probably one of the few bills you have that has no cost associated with it. The purpose of this bill is simply to clarify and with transparency with respect to an extremely important constituent program, and that's the legislative scholarships, which you all know well. This bill assures that the residents of each of our districts will have the funds available to them by requiring that we keep those funds available to our district. The bill makes these clarifications in a couple of ways: by prohibiting an applicant from applying for awards from multiple legislative districts, affirming that an initial application can only be made to the legislators representing the district of the applicant's primary residence, and defines the circumstances under which certain exceptions can be made. First of all, I just really want to assure you that this bill is not the result of any abuse of the program, but rather completely 100% in the spirit of governmental transparency with respect to these funds. The current program is not changed, it's not changed at all by this bill. An applicant can still apply to each of the state legislators within their district. If a student moves out of a delegate's district, they can apply to the original delegate for continuation or submit an application to the delegate for the new district, but only one of those two options. The addition of language regarding the provision of scholarship funds to members of a delegate or senator's family was to provide a safeguard against possible perceived abuse. Under this bill, it would be allowed with the approval of the Speaker or President and notification to the Joint Ethics Committee. This provision, again, is in the spirit of transparency. When I was first elected, I was not fully aware of the value of the scholarship program. In my 11 years of service, I personally have given out about $470,000 for hundreds of students from District 19. In this term alone, my district mates and I have provided over $500,000 to those seeking higher education. I have to say that some of the most gratifying moments of my terms have been in conversations with some of the beneficiaries of this scholarship. They are extremely grateful, and many tell me that they would not have been able to continue their education without these funds. Many of the recipients are the first in their families to go to college. I know that their families are proud of them, and so am I. I ask students in their applications to tell me why they are seeking this funding. And you have my written testimony. I won't read the complete things, but I will say the first sentence of a couple of them are important and compelling. One said, this scholarship would be life-changing because it would take away the stress of thinking about how I'm going to pay for my education. And another one said, as an aspiring nurse, an area of dire shortage at this moment, it has always been my dream and greatest desire to assist those in needs. These funds help this person to achieve that. Given how important these funds are to the families that we represent, it's essential that we make sure that the funds are available to them. That is what this bill does. And I respectfully am asking for your favorable report. And a student who benefited from one of my scholarships is here today to talk about what it meant to her.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Delegate Collison, for presenting the bill. We'll hear from your witness here. Ms. Ashley Paulino, thank you so much for being here. If you could please provide your testimony in 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ashley Paulino. I am a first generation graduate or soon to be graduate. I'm a senior at Towson University at the Shady Grove campus. Because of Delegate Colson's scholarship, I actually will be graduating this May with honors. And I'm actually at my internship school right now because I'm graduating to be a special education teacher, which has always been my dream. I'm thankful for the scholarship because again, it allows me to complete my dream and the opportunity that it has granted me. So thank you for allowing me to speak today, and please help other members of the community go to college by supporting this wonderful scholarship and this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paulino. We wish you the very best in your academic success. We have a question from Delegate Kittleman.
Thank you. For any of those you who were around quite a long time ago, my husband introduced a bill every year to eliminate the scholarship on the basis of the fact that it's more of a way to curry favor with your voters. But I disagree with him. I think it's a great thing, and I love getting the essays back from the students who apply. I do have a question, which is, there is an inequity that arose in my mind during our discussions of redistricting. And that is that if you live in a district that is represented by 3 delegates and a senator, your students have the ability to apply and receive 4 different scholarships. Whereas if you are in a single district, your students can only apply and get 2 scholarships. And I wondered if you'd thought about addressing that issue.
Thank you for the question, Delegate. I actually hadn't thought of addressing that issue. I'm willing to talk about it. The one thought I have right off the top of my head is the volume of people in a 3-person district. So we're actually spreading the same amount of funds over a larger group of people. Each one of us has the same amount, but I'm willing to entertain if there's something that could address that issue. We could look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Kittleman. Thank you very much, Delegate Collison, for presenting this bill and reminding all of us the good work we can do to help our students achieve their dreams through the scholarship programs. That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 1037. The committee will now move on to House Bill 899, Delegate Boatler, Higher Education Scholarship Program, Eagle Scout and Girl Scout Award recipients. Delegate Boatler.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Vice Chair Chang and members of the Appropriation Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Joe Boatler, And I want to thank you for the opportunity today to share with you about House Bill 899. This bill establishes an Eagle Scout and Girl Scout Gold Award recipient scholarship program. To qualify for this scholarship, the student must be an Eagle Scout or a recipient of the Girl Scout Gold Award, a Maryland resident under the age of 21, and enrolled in an institution of higher education in Maryland. This bill is the same bill that I had sponsored in 2020, but this year I have offered an amendment to expand eligibility, including students of private colleges and university, and not just public institution. The scholarship amount is $2,000 and may be received for up to 5 years. Up to 50 Eagle Scouts and 50 Girl Scout Gold Award recipients may receive scholarships each year on a first-come, first-served basis, beginning in the fiscal year 2024. The governor must include $200,000 in the annual state budget for this program. As many of you know, earning the rank of Eagle Scout or the Girl Scout Gold Award is a very long process. It takes years of dedication and hard work to meet the requirements necessary to achieve the highest rank one can receive in these organizations. For both the Eagle Scout and the Girl Scout Awards, individuals must complete a project that benefits their community and serve as a leader in their troop. Many times what you'll see is they'll take a project and they'll recruit other members in the troop to help them accomplish that project. These individuals start very young and slowly move through the ranks. And I believe the scholarship honors their demonstrated commitment to higher ideals and hard work. I know that every single one of us have attended either an Eagle Scout Award or a Gold Award or a Girl Scout Gold Award. And when you meet these individuals, you really get a great sense of the hard work and the dedication they put into their projects. And the reality is they really save many times local governments, even the state government, thousands upon thousands of dollars because of the projects that they do. I know in my district, we've had Eagle Scouts that did barrier reefs out there in the Chesapeake Bay, where they created these things out of cement and they dumped them out there, and they turned into reefs for the oysters. I've seen them do things in the state park, where they created like a visitor center. I've seen them do something in a historical area in Kingsville. I've seen them do projects in the community. And this saves really thousands and thousands of dollars. And I think it's very important that we remember that most of these kids, they come from middle-class families, and they really could use this support when they're going to college. And so for that, I urge that you would give this a favorable report. And I want to thank you for the time that you've given me. One thing I do want to point out in closing, that in the fiscal note, comparing the fiscal notes from 2022 to 2020 actually showed a decrease in cost. It went down from 50,000 down to 23,600. The 2020 fiscal note also mentions that the Office of Student Financial Assistant may need to hire a full-time person to administrate the program, or they may not. But the OSFA has grown from 13 staff since that time to 17, and they may be adding more. So that's a cost we're going to be able to save, because they should be able to do this with existing resources. And to remember, the annual awards are limited just to 100 scholarships. So please give this a favorable report, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Delegate Butler. Are there questions from members of the Appropriations Committee? Delegate Metzger is recognized.
Yes. Thank you. Delegate Boatler, I really like this bill. What the question I have is for a district that has 3 delegates and 1 senator, who would be the one to put the scholarship in for that particular Eagle Scout or Gold?
Well, I don't think that it would really matter who puts it in, because the total is just going to be 50.
What I'm saying is,
and so it can be a delegate that puts it in, it could be a senator that puts it in. I would hope that the delegates and senators would work together to award this type of scholarship.
no problem. I just want to make sure that all 3 and the senator doesn't do the same. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Doesn't overlap. That's fine.
Are there any other questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 899. The committee will now move on to House Bill 662, Delegate Geitlin, Advisory Stakeholder Group on Autism-Related Needs, Interagency Disability Boards, and the State Coordinator for Autism Strategy, Membership, Staffing, and Appointment. Delegate Geitlin, we welcome you to the Appropriations Committee. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it just would not be another legislative session if Delegate Guyton were not here in front of the Appropriations Committee asking for some change or some increased support for the autism coordinator position. So thank you for being here with me today. And I've come to ask you to give a favorable report to House Bill 662. This makes a few simple changes to the State Coordinator of Autism Strategy and Stakeholders Advisory Group that was established with the passage of 847 in 2020. I do want to let you know that the position has just recently been filled. It took a lot of time to get things moving on this position, and the stakeholder group met just last week for their first meeting. So things are happening, but we
Delegate
do feel as, I'm sorry.
Delegate Guyton, thank you so much for presenting your bill. Are you aware your camera's off?
I am not.
Okay.
I am sorry. Hold on one second. I thought I was on. I appreciate you wanting to see me. Is that better? Am I here? All right. Thank you.
Sorry
Thank
for
you, Delegate
interrupting.
Master, for the arms up. I apologize. No, I definitely want to see all of you when I talk about this. So I won't go back to the beginning just to save time for you all. But I do want to point out that you will be hearing or have already heard a departmental bill, which is very similar to the bill that I'm presenting. That is Senate Bill 169. It's already been heard in the Senate Finance Committee, and it is coming your way if it hasn't yet. I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 662 rather than the competing Senate Bill 169. The reasons are that there are some similarities between the two bills, but then there are some differences as well. So the similarities include adding the autism coordinator to the Interagency Disabilities Board, adding members of the House and Senate to the Stakeholders Advisory Group, and moving the responsibility of staffing the stakeholder group to the Governor's Office of Coordinating Initiatives from the Department of Disabilities, where it was moved last year. So some of the differences, though, is that House Bill 662, retains the coordinator as the chair of the advisory group as required by House Bill 847. And it also requires the coordinator to be appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate. And the reason that I think this is important after seeing how we've gotten started in this process is in order to elevate this position to where we want it to be, and also to provide legislative oversight to ensure that the most qualified applicants serve in this position. The amendments that I've introduced include requirements to consider geographical diversity of the state during the appointments process. Currently, a lot of folks come from the middle of the state, and so we would like to see that change made. And a clarifying amendment that the coordinator herself can add members to the advisory group as considered necessary and not the governor. So in addition, this amendment requires the funding, and this is where I come to with the money, everything else is simple, the funding of a full-time administrative assistant for this office. I've made this request to you for 3 years since I first brought it here, and we have still not gotten any relief. So there is no possible way that the coordinator, no matter how talented he or she is, can be successful in this position if she must answer 500 emails and calls every day. I know that I couldn't be here and be very effective without my staff, and I imagine that you all feel the same about yours. If there is any way that this committee can fast track the funding for that administrative staff person so that this work can really get started after more than 2 years. And I am once again pleading for you to help us do so. So I thank you for your consideration of House Bill 662. I'm happy to answer questions. And I want to thank you for helping us get this out off the ground and get it moving so far. There's so much potential for this. And I just think sometimes it takes some tweaks and a little bit more pushing to get where we need to go. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Delegate Guyton, for presenting the bill. We have a question from Delegate Geraldine Valentina-Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate Guyton, for this very important population. I know our committee's been working for a couple of years on this. So I am perplexed. We still don't have an autism coordinator appointed. I know we were working with DVM on a description. So there's still no appointed coordinator or anything?
No, thank you, Delegate Valentino-Smith. We have recently just gotten the approval and the appointment made. So
Okay.
She's been on the job now for about 2 months, since the middle of December. So she is on the job, but she is not on the job with any real support. So that is a big issue.
how will your part of the bill about the governor appointing then impact the current situation?
I think that gives us the ability to make sure that the next person who takes this position, or if that ends up being a requirement that she is appointed to the governor's office and has a little more oversight through the Executive Nominations Committee, that we make sure that we do have people in this position who are qualified to do that. The hiring situation was not well spelled out in the original bill. That's my fault. And so I'm coming back to remedy that.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your work for this very important population of parents and children.
Delegate Forbes is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Guyton, thank you for bringing this bill and your work on this issue. Can you tell me a little bit about the background of the current, the new coordinator that was just recently hired?
Yes, and I'm happy to do that, Delegate Forbes. I certainly don't want the fact that I'm bringing this bill to seem like there's any lack of excitement about her abilities to do this job. But to answer your question very specifically, she was a fitness instructor before taking on this position, and that may or may not have some of the qualifications that are really needed to make this fly.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Delegate Forbes. Are there any other questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for Delegate Guyton? Committee enjoys hearing and seeing you today, so thank you for being here. We will now
I'm glad you got to see me. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 662. The committee will hear the last bill for this afternoon. It is House Bill 1165, presented by our very own Delegate Kathy Forbes, Capital Projects, Higher Performance, and Green Buildings. Delegate Forbes, please proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vice Chair Chang. Thank you, members of Appropriations. Your long afternoon's almost over. For the record, I'm Delegate Kathy Forbes, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present HB 1165. This legislation will ensure that schools and other state-funded capital projects meet high performance and green building requirements. It will also reinstitute a third-party verification process to make sure the goals we set are met. Maryland was a leader in legislating green building when in 2008, it passed the High Performance Building Act. Unfortunately, in 2018, we passed legislation that although still requiring the standards, we no longer required verification that those standards are being met. Witnesses on my panel today will share with you their experiences and why this bill is so necessary. Our planet and all of their state residents benefit from a healthier environment brought on by the construction of green buildings. Where standard buildings waste and use tons of materials each year, green buildings minimize waste and use fewer resources. Higher performance buildings save energy, save water, and produce less waste. In this case, saving the environment also saves the taxpayers money, as green buildings have lower operating and maintenance costs throughout the life of the building. It has never been more affordable to build high-performance buildings. It has never been more important to address the pressing climate change issue from every possible opportunity. We have unprecedented state funding for school construction, thanks to the passage of Built to Learn. And we have surplus budget funding that we are going to focus on other public construction projects. We have a responsibility to ensure those buildings are high-performance buildings. HB 1165 will do just that. I'm grateful for your attention to this pressing issue, and I ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Delegate Forbes, for presenting the bill. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the bill sponsor? This afternoon, we have joining us with us 5 individuals who are providing favorable testimony to each of the witnesses. If they could please limit their testimony to 2 minutes. The first person we have is Mr. Chris Parks with AIA Maryland. Mr. Parks, thank you for being here. Please proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to join today. I'm Chris Parts with AIA Maryland, representing nearly 2,000 architects across the state. This House Bill 1165 is the High Performance Building Bill was originally established in 2008. It set aspirational goals for our state to lead by example and demonstrate a commitment for state-funded projects to build healthy and efficient buildings. The bill has impacted projects across every jurisdiction in the state, and most of the projects not only met but exceeded the goals. As architects who are often trying to work to meet code standards, achieving and exceeding those goals is really pretty exceptional. So we think that that's a strong commitment by the state. And as aspects have influenced these standards, we've identified a few minor language changes that we think will, number one, provide clarity both to projects impacted and aligning the definitions more to code standards. And secondly, for transparency, as Delegate Forbes had mentioned, to verify the results of achievement that we're getting and setting these goals, and then reporting and understanding the impact. 2 of my children got to enjoy their last couple years in elementary school, thanks to Delegate Forbes really helping to push for that in our jurisdiction. And what I really noticed is that the impact of these high performance buildings is really significant. It impacts the students, it impacts the staff, and it impacts the families who participate in these. That was probably the highlight of their year, or their primary education, going to school that was developed in that way. We want to make sure these regulations are clear to follow, and we want to make sure that we have a means of sharing that impact with everyone in jurisdictions for all of our Maryland residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Parks, for being here. Next, we'll hear from Elizabeth Beardsley, U.S. Green Building Council. Please unmute yourself, Ms. Beardsley. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Vice Chair and members of the committee, and Delegate Forbes for sponsoring this important legislation. As Delegate Forbes said, Maryland surely has been a long leader in green building, and in addition to improving energy efficiency and saving money, green schools also help protect student and teacher health by ensuring a clean and healthy indoor environment and providing programs and services. An independent third-party verification is a crucial step in building high-performing buildings and schools. And this process that's restored in this bill will give the state legislators and the public confidence that tax dollars are being used to deliver these high-performing schools by verifying project teams are delivering on key aspects of their designs and plans. There are many examples of green schools throughout Maryland, and one example is Cherry Hill Elementary. There's also a growing number of net zero green schools throughout the state, which is very exciting and very supportive of the state's climate goals. We also want to note the bill would call for the key state entity, the Maryland Green Building Council, which is staffed by the DGS, to ensure that state buildings, schools, and community colleges are meeting the statute. Again, this is a long-standing program established by the state legislature, and this small step will help ensure there's transparency and ensure that the intent is fully realized. Thank you. We do urge our support, and thank you for this time to testify.
Thank you very much, Ms. Beersley. Also, we have next is Ms. Lisa Floretto.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Floretto, and thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony in support of House Bill 1165. I'm a sustainability architect and member of the AIA, American Institute of Architects, and a member of the U.S. Green Building Council. I've served as a member of the Maryland Green Building Council for 3 years, and I'm also a Baltimore City Sustainability Commissioner. As part of both groups, I've worked in task forces to review codes to promote this equivalency with LEED Silver legislation, as denoted in that 2008 High Performance Building Act. This bill clarifies the requirement and restores the intent of that very important bill by 4 main alterations. The first removes that language that was added a couple of years ago, as Delegate Ford said. It had a section that required the council to develop guidelines for schools to achieve the equivalent of LEED without certification. This simply allowed architects to say that the project complies with without any documentation or validation. This guideline language is not needed, as the existing law had a certification path called the International Green Construction Code, aka IGCC. And so removing this language will simply revert to the previous compliance paths with certification, LEED or Green Globes, or following the Green Construction Code. House Bill 1165 also amends the LEED certification level for schools and state buildings if they are located in rural areas and if they follow LEED. The difference would be from certified to silver. And this is a 10-point difference, and those school districts really cannot choose the location of their school. The last 2 items simply clarify the percentage of state funding and the definition of major renovation. And most importantly, it requires now that the council report on the status of the program, and this helps to ensure that Maryland continues to be an accountable and responsible sustainability leader. Thank you, and I look forward to the favorable passing of this bill.
Thank you very much, Ms. Floretto. Next, we have Mr. John Williams with the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. Mr. Williams.
Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee, John Williams representing the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. I've been around these school construction issues now for, I guess, 20 years. Was certainly involved when we adopted the LEED Silver standard as the baseline in Maryland. And yes, we were a leader for many years. Was also involved in seeking the flexibility provided in the 2018 school construction reform legislation, and testifying today to say if it's the will of the committee and the House to approach reinstating green building standards for schools as proposed in this legislation, and it would certainly be reasonable to do so. And we appreciate the reference to LEED certified relative to LEED Silver, for instance, in the bill. There is, I think, a flaw in the approach of essentially, as my written testimony points out, replacing an and with an or and having any one of several factors triggering the high performance building standards. And so we would want to work against a disincentive to, for instance, replace an HVAC system, because that would convert the building to a building that had to meet the LEED certified standards. And so major renovations are generally treated as new construction projects in Maryland, but it's a very large project relative to the overall shell of the building and scope of the renovation. And by making this bill include an or, a simple major systemic replacement could trigger those standards, driving up the potential costs of the overall project and potentially dropping it off the list of requests from the local school system because of that. So for that reason, we suggest an amendment to, at the very least, restore replace the or with an and look forward to working with the committee as this bill proceeds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams, for providing testimony. We've been advised by the bill sponsor that an amendment's being drafted to address that. So thank you very much. Next, we'll hear our last testimony from Mr. Jeffrey Guido with the Baltimore DC Building Trades Council.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, committee members. We support the bill, favorable with an amendment. As you can see in my testimony, we wanted to delete the more than prior to 25% and then add or insert or more after the 25%. And that is to keep the clarification or not get confusing the current threshold for state funding at 25% of state funds for schools and public works projects. We certainly support the bill. We're all in for green construction, the green roofs, thermal pane windows, rainwater catchment, geothermal, solar, of course, and wind. And we ask for a favorable report with the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Guido. Are there any questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for the witnesses? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill. Delegate Forbes, bill sponsor.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Willems and Mr. Guido for bringing the issues to my attention. And we do have the amendment drafted, and I'll share it with you, that addresses both of your concerns.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the Appropriations Committee for House Bill 1165? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 1165. It also ends all the bills that we are hearing today. Committee, the announcement that there may be a schedule change for tomorrow, so please keep an eye on our emails with regards to any changes for tomorrow. And on behalf of Chairwoman Maggie McIntosh and Appropriations Committee, we want to thank all the bill sponsors and witnesses for participating in today's virtual bill hearing.